2.5 Men, Reincarnated as Jake Harper. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Pilot Episode. I opened my eyes slowly, squinting against the gentle morning sunlight that streamed through the slightly parted curtains. Something felt odd, different, yet strangely familiar. My limbs were lighter, my surroundings brighter. The ceiling was covered with glow-in-the-dark stars, and posters of superheroes stared down from the walls. This wasn't my room. Sitting up abruptly, my heart raced as confusion flooded through me. I swung my legs off the bed, surprised by how short they seemed. Standing, I quickly made my way to the mirror hanging on the bedroom door. A startled, round-cheeked child stared back at me too. It took a moment before realization hit. "No way," I whispered, startled by the high pitch of my voice. The face staring back at me belonged to Jake Harper. Panic swelled briefly as fragmented memories rushed back. I was Michael, an engineer working in the financial sector. Or at least, I used to be, until the blinding headlights, the screeching tires, and the crushing darkness took everything away. Yet now, impossibly, I found myself in the body of Jake Harper, a boy from a television sitcom. A strange mix of excitement and fear churned inside me. Why me? And more importantly, how? For a knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Jake, breakfast." "Hurry up," Judith called, her voice firm yet carrying one coming. "Mom," I responded automatically, still unsettled by the unfamiliar childish voice. I made my way to the kitchen, my movements cautious yet increasingly natural. Judith was setting the table, her expression distracted but softening slightly when she saw me. "Good morning," she said gently. "Did you sleep well? You seem a bit out of it." "Just tired," I answered, forcing a small smile. "Maybe I didn't sleep enough," she nodded sympathetically. "Well, eat up. We need to leave soon." "Your dad's meeting us at your Uncle Charlie's." I sat quietly, munching on toast and cereal without tasting anything, thoughts spinning around this bizarre new reality. Alan Harper was now my father, and Charlie Harper, infamous for his carefree lifestyle, was my uncle. The notion was surreal. What would living this life truly mean? "Jake, you're very quiet," Judith noted, looking closely at me with genuine concern. "Is something bothering you?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the sincerity in her eyes. "Not really," I finally said. "I'm just thinking about stuff." Judith echoed gently, raising an eyebrow curiously. "Just life," I responded vaguely, offering another reassuring smile. Judith smiled warmly. "Finish up your breakfast, honey. We should head out soon." After breakfast, Judith watched me carefully as she gathered her purse and keys. "Ready to go?" "Yeah," I said, standing slowly. Her reassuring gaze steadied my nerves, making the bizarre morning seem slightly more manageable. The drive to Charlie's Malibu home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Judith occasionally glanced at me, checking to see if I was okay. The scenic coastal route was breathtaking, and it gave me time to think and adjust to the absurdity of my new existence. Being Jake Harper might not be so bad after all. When we finally arrived, Judith parked carefully and took a deep breath, staring thoughtfully at Charlie's beachfront home. "I really hope this arrangement works out," she murmured quietly, more to herself than to me. "It'll be okay," I replied instinctively, surprising myself with a genuine confidence in my voice. She smiled gently, squeezed my shoulder affectionately, and led me toward the door. Judith knocked firmly, and within moments Alan appeared, looking flustered and slightly anxious as usual. "Hey, Judith." "Hey, son," Alan greeted nervously, stepping aside quickly. "Come in." "Charlie's still asleep." Judith entered hesitantly, her eyes scanning the interior critically. "Alan, are you absolutely sure about this? You and Charlie living together?" Alan sighed, rubbing his forehead wearily. "Judith, it's going to be fine. Charlie's a good guy underneath it all. And besides, it's only temporary." While they continued discussing schedules and parenting logistics, I quietly slipped away, heading upstairs toward Charlie's bedroom. Each step felt heavier than the last, my heart racing with anticipation and uncertainty. I knocked softly at first, then louder when there was no response. Eventually, I cautiously opened the door. Charlie lay sprawled across the bed, snoring gently, oblivious to the world. "Uncle Charlie," I called out hesitantly. When he didn't respond, I shook him lightly. Uncle Charlie. Charlie stirred groggily, cracking open an eye with obvious annoyance. Jake? What the hell are you doing here? Mom brought me, I replied calmly, trying not to laugh at his confused expression. And you shouldn't say hell. Mom says every swear word costs you $1. Charlie stared at me blankly before smirking, reaching for his wallet. He handed me a $20 bill with exaggerated resignation. Consider this prepaid, too, I grinned broadly, pocketing the money. Thanks, Uncle Charlie. Charlie finally got up, stretching lazily. Let's head downstairs before your parents escalate their friendly negotiations into an all-out war. We descended the stairs together, finding Alan and Judith still engaged in tense conversation. Charlie quietly guided me outside onto the deck, settling into chairs overlooking the beach. A gentle ocean breeze provided a calming backdrop to my chaotic thoughts. After a brief, comfortable silence, I spoke up hesitantly. Mom and Dad are getting divorced, Uncle Charlie. One Charlie sighed dramatically, leaning back in his chair. You're lucky, Jake. When I was your age, I could only dream about my parents splitting up. I looked at him skeptically. But your mom is my grandma. She says you're a bitter disappointment, Charlie chuckled, taking a casual sip of his beer. Yeah, that sounds about right. Despite everything, the confusion, the strange new life, I found myself smiling genuinely. Perhaps being Jake Harper wasn't such a bad thing. With a deep breath, I leaned back, accepting the warmth of the sun and the comfort of this strange yet oddly familiar family. Chapter 2, Charlie's House. Judith lingered briefly at the doorway, her eyes filled with a blend of concern and determination. She reached out to gently touch my shoulder, offering a reassuring squeeze. Remember, Jake, call me if you need anything. I'll just be in Vegas with your Aunt Liz. Try to enjoy yourself here, she said softly, a hint of anxiety in her voice too. I will, Mom, I replied, managing a convincing smile. Have fun in Vegas, she smiled back faintly, gave a quick nod to Alan and Charlie, and then walked toward her car. I watched as she drove away, feeling a strange mix of freedom and apprehension. Charlie glanced at me and smirked lightly. Come on, Jake. Let's go shopping. You're gonna need some real food around here. Shopping? I asked, surprised but intrigued. Charlie shrugged casually. Yeah, food shopping. What, did you think groceries just magically appear in the fridge? I laughed slightly, following him out to his car. Alan waved goodbye from the door, clearly relieved to have a moment alone. At the grocery store, we moved through the aisles leisurely, picking up snacks, cereal, and frozen pizzas. Charlie seemed entirely relaxed, making casual conversation and occasionally throwing random treats into the cart. As we passed through the cereal aisle, Charlie picked up a box of Maple Loops and smirked at me. You know, I once wrote a jingle for this cereal. No way. Mom always hated it, but Dad used to hum it all the time, I replied, grinning enthusiastically. Charlie chuckled, genuinely amused. Good taste runs in the family, I nudged him playfully. Come on, sing the Maple Loop song again. Charlie cleared his throat dramatically and began to sing loudly and off-key. It's got oats and corn and wheat, its sweetest breakfast treat, it's maple, maplelicious. Laughing, I joined in enthusiastically, attracting amused looks from other shoppers. One woman stopped, smiling warmly at us. Oh, that's so sweet. You two look adorable singing together. You must be very proud of your son. Charlie gave a charming smile but quickly corrected her. Actually, he's my nephew. Oh. Well, you're wonderful together, she said kindly, slightly embarrassed but still smiling warmly as she continued shopping. Once she was out of earshot, Charlie chuckled softly, glancing down at me. You know, Jake, you're even better than a dog. I laughed, genuinely enjoying the simple moment we shared. After finishing our shopping, we headed back to Charlie's beach house, the trunk full of groceries. As we entered, Alan greeted us from the kitchen. Hey guys, Rose stopped by while you were gone. Charlie immediately looked angry. You let Rose in my house? Alan, why would you do that? Alan shrugged helplessly. She said she was your maid. My mind instantly flashed to memories of Rose from the show, quirky, unpredictable, and more than a little crazy. I suppressed a shudder, hoping things wouldn't get too complicated too soon. Meanwhile, Charlie moved toward the kitchen cabinets, pulling on the doors with an angry expression. He glanced back at Alan. She glued my cabinets again. Before Alan could respond, there was a brisk knock at the front door, followed by the unmistakable sound of heels clicking sharply against the floor. A familiar, authoritative voice echoed through the room. Charlie. Alan. What on earth is going on here? Charlie froze, eyes widening. Oh God, it's Mom. Evelyn Harper strode into the kitchen. Her expression a mixture of annoyance and amusement. Her gaze landed first on Charlie, then Alan, and finally settled on me. Jake, darling, come give Grandma a hug. One high, Grandma, I said politely, allowing her perfumed embrace while trying not to appear overwhelmed. Evelyn stepped back, surveying the scene critically. Honestly, Charlie, why can't you keep a clean house? And Alan, must you always look so defeated? Charlie sighed dramatically. Nice to see you too, Mom. Alan shrugged, resigned. Hello, Mom, Evelyn continued, her tone sharp yet refined. And now this ridiculous divorce. Judith was impossible enough as it was, but now, to see my grandson, I need to make an appointment like I'm visiting the dentist. Alan winced slightly, clearly uncomfortable. What divorce, Mom? And it's not that bad, not that bad, Evelyn echoed incredulously. Do you hear yourself, Alan? What is Jake supposed to think, caught on the middle like this? She turned toward me, her eyes softening slightly. Jake, if things get too difficult here, you're always welcome to stay with me. I smiled awkwardly, uncertain how to respond. Thanks, Grandma, Evelyn nodded decisively. Good. At least someone in this family knows how to behave appropriately. With a final sweeping glance at Charlie and Alan, she adjusted her purse and turned on her heel, walking briskly toward the door. I'll expect updates, Alan. And try to keep the chaos under control. Once she was gone, Charlie let out a deep breath. Well, that was fun. Alan looked drained but managed a weak smile. At least she's consistent. We all shared a quiet laugh, releasing the tension that had filled the room. Maybe life as Jake Harper would never be simple, but at least it promised never to be dull one. Chapter 3, Fuck Off. The next few days passed quickly, and soon it was time for me to officially start splitting my time between Mom's place and Uncle Charlie's beach house. Alan seemed both nervous and excited about the new arrangement, while Charlie appeared largely indifferent, though I suspected he secretly enjoyed having us around, or at least, liked having me around. On my first official weekend at Charlie's, Alan was already in planning mode. He paced around the living room, holding a colorful brochure. Jake, what do you say we go to Disneyland tomorrow? It'll be fun. I hesitated, glancing toward Charlie, who was lounging on the sofa, clearly uninterested in theme parks. Actually, Dad, maybe we can do Disneyland another time? I'm kind of tired and just feel like hanging around the house. Alan's face briefly fell before he quickly masked it with a forced smile. Oh, sure, that's fine. Maybe it's a good day to catch up on some errands anyway. I'll just take care of some stuff I've been meaning to get done. Sounds good, Dad, I replied, relieved at his quick acceptance. Alan patted my shoulder gently before grabbing his keys and heading out, leaving Charlie and me alone in the peaceful silence of the house. Charlie glanced over at me, a grin spreading across his face. Good call, kid. The playoffs are on today, Dolphins versus Jaguars. I smiled, relaxing into the couch. Nice, the NFL had been a big part of my past life, and it felt reassuringly familiar. Charlie flipped on the television, settling comfortably into his chair as the pregame show began. You know, Jake, half the fun of watching sports is betting on them. I raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. Really? Like, actual money? Charlie smirked mischievously. Of course actual money. What else would we use? Cookies? I chuckled softly, my mind racing. I vividly remember this particular playoff season. The semifinals would eventually see Jaguars versus Titans and Rams versus Tampa Bay. I couldn't recall every exact score, but I distinctly remember the Jaguars utterly dominating the Dolphins in the quarterfinals and the Rams winning the finals against the Titans, 23-16, with Kurt Warner as MVP too. So, who are you betting on, Uncle Charlie? I'm putting some money on the Jaguars. Great. I've got $100 here, I said confidently, pulling out the money I'd earned from Charlie's curse jar and the poker night where I'd destroyed Charlie's friends with my unexpected skill. But bet that the Jaguars win by at least 50 points. 50 points? Charlie asked incredulously. Do you even know how football works, kid? Yeah, I know, but imagine the odds we'll get, I said with a sly grin. Charlie rolled his eyes, reluctantly picking up the phone. Alright, smartass, but don't come crying to me later. After placing the call, he shook his head in disbelief. The odds are 12-1. You'll win $1,200 if you pull off this miracle. Did you bet too? I asked curiously. Just 100, he said with a smirk. I don't need you smugly rubbing it in if, by some miracle, you're right. We settled in as the game kicked off, and immediately it was clear this game would be a blowout. By the end of the first quarter, the Jaguars were already ahead 24-0. Charlie glanced over at me, his expression shifting from disbelief to genuine amazement. When the final whistle blew, the Jaguars had indeed dominated, winning by more than 50 points. Charlie and I leaped up, dancing and screaming in triumph. $1,000. Woohoo, I shouted, barely believing our luck for 1,200. Actually, Charlie corrected gleefully. He was already halfway through another beer, celebrating enthusiastically. And there's still another game today, Charlie added, turning toward me with excitement. Who should we bet on next? Genius, I paused, recalling the details. Tampa Bay would narrowly edge out Washington by exactly 1 point. Put it all on Tampa Bay winning by exactly 1 point, I said confidently. Everything? A 1-point margin exactly? Are you serious? Charlie asked incredulously, though a wide grin spread across his face. All right, why not? He picked up the phone again, clearly influenced by alcohol-fueled confidence. Make it $5,000, Tampa Bay, 1-point margin, $5,000, I echoed in disbelief. You increase the bet, go big or go home, Jake, Charlie said with a playful wink. The game began, and tension rose with every play. Tampa Bay and Washington fought fiercely, keeping the score agonizingly close. By the final quarter, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely sit still. Come on, just one more touchdown and the extra point, Charlie muttered anxiously. With mere seconds remaining, Tampa Bay drove forward, scoring the crucial touchdown. Silence filled the room as we waited anxiously for the kick. When the ball sailed perfectly through the goalposts, Charlie and I exploded in cheers. Yes! Yes! We did it, Charlie screamed, dancing around the room like a delighted child. What's going on here? Alan asked, standing bewildered in the doorway, grocery bags still in hand. Charlie paused just long enough to grin widely. Your son just made the bets of a lifetime, Alan. Alan's eyes narrowed, glancing from Charlie to me. Wait, you're gambling with Jake now? He asked angrily. Relax, Dad, I interjected quickly, trying to calm the situation. We just won big. Alan set down the bags, clearly annoyed but also curious. Define big. Charlie looked at Alan, unable to contain himself. 40 grand, Alan. Your kid just won us 40 grand. Alan's eyes went wide, his jaw dropping in shock. $40,000, Alan hesitated, torn between fatherly responsibility and disbelief. Eventually, he shook his head with a resigned smile. Jake, maybe you could lend me some money. Asked him. Fuck off, Dad, I said, astonished by his shameless 14. Yeah, fuck off, Alan, completed Uncle Charlie too. Chapter 4, 3 Men in a Jackpot. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear, filling Charlie's beach house with a calm, lazy atmosphere. After yesterday's big wins, spirits were high. Alan, however, looked a bit restless, sipping his coffee nervously as he glanced between Charlie and me. 2 more playoff games today, Charlie announced enthusiastically, settling onto the sofa with a fresh cup of coffee. We've got Vikings versus Rams and Titans versus Colts. Any magical predictions today, Jake? I hesitated slightly, trying to recall details from my previous life's memories. Unlike yesterday's games, today's matchups hadn't stood out particularly clearly in my mind. No special blowouts or memorable plays came to me, only the vague knowledge that the Rams and Titans would advance. Nothing exact, I admitted honestly, but I'm pretty confident the Rams and Titans will both win. Charlie raised an eyebrow. Pretty confident? That's it? No magical scores this time. I shook my head apologetically. Put that Viking and Rams will have more than 70 points in total. Charlie scratched his chin thoughtfully. That will give us great odds. Alan looked up sharply, setting his mug down with a loud clink. Wait, you're not seriously considering another big bet, are you? Charlie shrugged casually. Why not? We're playing with house money now, Alan. Alan shook his head firmly. 40 grand isn't house money. It's a lot of money. I leaned forward, addressing Alan directly. Dad, Uncle Charlie said we'd split the money evenly, right? That means 20,000 is mine. I'm thinking we take 30 grand from our winnings, 15,000 each, and put it on this combined bet. Alan paled visibly. $30,000, Jake? That's absolutely insane. You can't just throw away money like that. I held my ground calmly. Dad, it's my money. And I believe it's a smart bet, Charlie nodded enthusiastically, backing me up. Come on, Alan. Trust the kid's instincts. He got us this far. Alan sighed deeply, clearly torn between caution and the allure of the potential winnings. What kind of return are we talking about here? Charlie grinned mischievously. We'll get about 8 times our bet. That's nearly $250,000, Alan. Alan's eyes widened dramatically, and for a moment, he seemed to lose the ability to speak. 8 times? Are you serious? Completely serious, Charlie replied, grinning broadly. Jake hasn't been wrong yet. Alan hesitated, clearly struggling internally. After a long pause, he sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead anxiously. Fine. If you're both so convinced. I'll throw in 5,000 of my own. 5. Charlie looked pleasantly shocked, laughing loudly. Now that's the spirit, Alan. Welcome to the dark side. Alan groaned softly, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. If we lose this, you both owe me big time. 3. Charlie picked up the phone eagerly, placing our combined $35,000 bet. As he hung up, he flashed me an approving smile. All set, gentlemen. Now we just sit back and enjoy the games. We spent the afternoon nervously glued to the television, each play carrying enormous weight. The Rams took an early lead, eventually securing a victory. Tension filled the room during the Titans and Colts game, which was far closer than we'd expected. With mere minutes remaining, the Titans edged ahead with a late touchdown, securing their narrow victory. We leaped up simultaneously, screaming in celebration. We did it again, Charlie shouted, pumping his fists in the air. Alan stared at the television in stunned disbelief, slowly sinking into his chair. I can't believe this, Alan whispered, running his hand through his hair. Did we really just win almost $300,000? Charlie threw an arm around Alan's shoulders, laughing joyfully. Believe it, Alan. Jake is officially our golden goose. Alan finally cracked a broad, genuine smile, looking over at me with pride mixed with amazement. Jake, I don't even know what to say, I grinned back at both of them, feeling incredibly satisfied. Don't worry, Dad. You're going to get used to winning, Charlie chuckled warmly. I could definitely get used to this lifestyle. Charlie soon popped open a bottle of expensive champagne he'd been saving, pouring generous amounts into 3 glasses, but I didn't take it. Alan, initially hesitant, soon found himself swept up in the joyful atmosphere. After a couple of glasses, Alan was laughing freely, his usual stress entirely forgotten. Who knew gambling could be this much fun? Alan joked, slightly slurring his words, which made Charlie laugh even harder. 3C, Alan, I always told you to relax and trust your instincts, Charlie teased. Alan shook his head, smiling widely. Maybe you've been right all along, Charlie. Eventually, Alan and Charlie began singing old songs loudly and off-key, their arms thrown around each other's shoulders. Watching them, I couldn't help but laugh, thoroughly enjoying this unexpected moment of family bonding. After a while, Charlie dropped onto the sofa beside me, pulling me into a warm, slightly drunken hug. His eyes softened as he grinned at me proudly. Jake, you're the best thing that's ever happened to us, he said sincerely. I love you, kid. I felt warmth spread through me, smiling as I hugged him back. Love you too, Uncle Charlie. Alan stumbled over, joining the embrace. And don't forget me. I love you too, son. We all laughed again, genuinely happy, united by a bond stronger than I'd ever imagined possible too. Chapter 5, Back to School. Monday morning arrived, and I lay awake in bed, still amazed by the events of the weekend. We had won in nearly $300,000 in just 2 days. It felt surreal. Doing some quick mental math, I realized $125,000 was probably just 1 or 2 months of Uncle Charlie's usual income, given his lifestyle and success as a jingle writer. For Dad, however, $40,000 represented about half a year's salary, something he himself had muttered in shock yesterday. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps and muffled voices downstairs. Curious, I quickly got dressed and wandered into the kitchen. There, standing at the counter and sipping coffee as if she owned the place, was a woman I instantly recognized, Berta. She turned to face me, eyeing me up and down appraisingly. So you're Jake, huh? Heard a lot about you. I'm Berta, the one who keeps this place livable. Nice to meet you, I replied politely, smiling. I knew exactly who Berta was from watching the show. She was blunt, tough, and incredibly funny. Meeting her in person felt exciting. Bird narrowed her eyes slightly as if sizing me up. "You're way more polite than your uncle. Guess manners skip a generation in the Harper family," she remarked dryly, making her way toward Charlie's bedroom. I moved toward the kitchen, intending to grab some breakfast, but before I could start, I overheard my dad's voice lecturing about not putting peanut butter in the refrigerator. Curious, I headed toward the sound, only to see Berta leaving the room. "Uncle Charlie," I asked, feigning innocence, "why is Berta leaving?" Charlie sighed dramatically. "Why? It doesn't matter, Jake. What matters is she's gone." He looked at Alan with exaggerated despair. "And we're going to die?" Alan rolled his eyes, clearly irritated but slightly amused. "Relax, Charlie. We'll manage, somehow." "You don't understand, Alan," Charlie protested dramatically. "Berta was the only thing keeping us from descending into total chaos." I chuckled softly at the exchange. Though Charlie was exaggerating, I knew Berta's absence would indeed be felt too. Alan suddenly glanced at the clock. "Jake, hurry up, it's your first day back at school. You don't want to be late," I sighed quietly, grabbing my backpack from the living room. The excitement of the weekend quickly faded into the mundane reality of 6th grade. As Alan drove me to school, I stared out the window, my mind wandering. Repeating elementary school, knowing everything I did from my past life, seemed tedious. Should I show my intelligence, skip some grades, and save myself from boredom? "To you okay, Jake?" Alan asked, noticing my silence. "Yeah, Dad," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about school," he nodded sympathetically. "I know it's not as exciting as winning money with Charlie, but it's important." "I know," I replied, deciding to take things slow for now. Perhaps blending in was the safest option. For Alan pulled up to the school entrance, and I stepped out, waving goodbye. Walking toward the familiar building, I felt strangely calm. Maybe school would be bearable after all, especially knowing I had an entirely new life waiting outside these classroom walls. My optimism, however, quickly faded as I entered the classroom and sat through the first lessons of the day. Basic math problems, simple reading comprehension, and geography questions about state capitals left me astonished. I had forgotten just how rudimentary 6th grade material was. "This is going to be hell," I murmured softly to myself, staring at the board while my classmates enthusiastically raised their hands to answer basic questions. Having to pretend interest and coexist daily with 10-year-olds seemed daunting and exhausting. Still, I considered my options carefully. Maybe revealing my full intelligence right away would make things weird. Perhaps slowly showing a bit more skill would be smarter. Yet, as I glanced at the clock again, counting down the hours left in the day, I firmly decided one thing: by the end of 6th grade, I would leap ahead to high school, skipping 2 years at once. One after what felt like an eternity, the school day ended, and I saw Mom waiting by her car to pick me up. As I climbed into the passenger seat, she greeted me with a warm smile. "Hey, honey. How was your first day back?" I sighed softly. "It was okay, I guess. Pretty easy stuff." Judith glanced at me thoughtfully as she drove. "Is everything alright, Jake? You seem a little quiet." "I'm fine," I assured her gently, pausing for a moment before asking, "Are you okay, Mom? You seem tired." She smiled softly, clearly touched by my concern. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a busy day. But thank you for asking." We drove in comfortable silence for a minute, then Judith broke the quiet. "I heard from your dad about your weekend with Charlie. Seems like you had a good time." I smiled faintly, nodding. "Yeah, it was fun. Uncle Charlie's place is pretty cool." Judith sighed lightly, a small but genuine smile appearing on her face. "I'm glad you're getting along with him. I know this situation is hard, but I want you to have good relationships with your family." "Thanks, Mom," I replied sincerely. "I think things are going to be okay." She reached over and gently squeezed my hand. "Me too, Jake. I think everything will work out." I relaxed into my seat, watching the familiar neighborhood drift by as we headed home. Chapter 6, Soccer, Suffering, and Single Moms. The weekend finally arrived again, bringing with it an early Saturday morning soccer game. I stared at my ceiling, questioning whether attending the game was even worth it. The enthusiasm I once had for these simple childhood activities had drastically faded, replaced by a dread of needs to play with a bunch of 12-year-old kids. With a heavy sigh, I pulled myself out of bed, trudging slowly into the kitchen, where Alan was already sipping his coffee and flipping through the newspaper. He looked up with his usual cheerful smile, oblivious to my internal struggle. Morning, Jake. Ready for your soccer game? I hesitated briefly, glancing at the floor. Dad, do I really need to go? Alan looked surprised, concern creasing his forehead. What do you mean? You love soccer. Are you feeling okay? I forced a casual shrug, trying not to worry him. Yes, I'm fine. Just not feeling as excited about it as before. Alan set the newspaper down, giving me his full attention. Jake, is something bothering you? You used to look forward to these games. Nothing's wrong, Dad, I assured him quickly, guilt tugging at me for dampening his enthusiasm. I guess I'm just growing out of it. Alan nodded slowly, clearly confused but trying to be supportive. Well, growing up is normal, Jake, but let's give it a shot today. Who knows, you might still enjoy it. I nodded reluctantly, not wanting to disappoint him further. Okay, I'll go get ready. As Alan went back to reading his paper, I wandered into the living room, where Uncle Charlie was sprawled on the couch, groaning dramatically with a pillow covering his face. Clearly, he was nursing a significant hangover from last night's activities. A mischievous thought crept into my mind. If I had to endure this 6th grade soccer match, maybe someone else should share the misery. Hey, Uncle Charlie, I said loudly, tapping his shoulder. Charlie groaned louder but didn't move the pillow. Jake, unless the house is on fire, please let me die peacefully. You promised you'd come to my soccer game, I reminded him cheerfully, grinning at his obvious discomfort. Charlie slowly lifted the pillow from his face, squinting at me painfully. Did I really say that? Yup, I replied, my smile widening. And as you always say, a Harper honors his word. When did I even said that? Then he sighed dramatically, rubbing his temples with exaggerated agony. Alright, kid. Just give me 10 minutes to feel human again. Thanks, Uncle Charlie, I replied brightly, walking away triumphant. About 15 minutes later, Charlie appeared at the front door, sunglasses shielding his eyes and a large bottle of aspirin in his hand. Alan looked on with amusement as Charlie shuffled toward the car, clearly regretting his promise. This is cruel and unusual punishment, Jake, Charlie muttered as he climbed into the car. You do realize this counts as child cruelty towards your uncle, right? I laughed softly, enjoying the moment. Come on, Uncle Charlie, there'll be single moms at the field, I smirked. He paused thoughtfully, weighing his hangover against the possibility of flirtation. Finally, he sighed deeply. Fine, you win. The soccer game turned out to be predictably simple. Facing a bunch of 10-year-olds wasn't exactly challenging with my adult mindset and coordination. I effortlessly scored goal after goal, steering our team toward a decisive victory. The other kids cheered. Their joy contagious despite my initial lack of excitement. For the first time I was the best in a sport game, but will not take long to me become average again. 18 returning home, Alan was beaming, enthusiastically recounting every goal I had scored. Charlie, now slightly more sober, offered a sarcastic smirk. Hey, Alan, Charlie remarked dryly as we pulled into the driveway, I thought your whole thing was about participation and not keeping score. Alan laughed, waving him off dismissively. Screw that. My son won the game, too. Charlie chuckled, shaking his head in mock disbelief. Fantastic consistency in your parenting, Alan. Alan merely shrugged, proudly ignoring Charlie's remark. Well, I can't help it if my son's a soccer prodigy, I laughed quietly as we exited the car, feeling oddly comforted by the familiar family banter. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang, interrupting the calm atmosphere of the house. Alan opened the door, and to my surprise, there stood Kate, one of Charlie's recent romantic interests, accompanied by her 12-year-old son, Ernie. Charlie quickly appeared from the living room, flashing his signature charming smile as he greeted Kate warmly. As Charlie exchanged pleasantries with Kate, he subtly glanced toward me, clearly signaling for assistance. Sighing inwardly, I followed his unspoken instruction, pulling him aside discreetly. Can't you just date her normally? I whispered in frustration. Why do I have to entertain her, son? Charlie chuckled softly, clearly amused by my annoyance. Jake, you're forgetting something important here. You and Ernie are the same age. You're still technically a kid. Besides, he added with a sly grin, consider this payback for dragging me out to your soccer game this morning. I groaned softly, realizing I'd walked right into this trap. Resigned to my fate, I turned toward Ernie, plastering a polite, forced smile on my face. Hey, Jake, Ernie greeted me enthusiastically. You scored a bunch of goals today, I nodded, feigning modesty. Yet, it wasn't too difficult, Ernie grinned, completely oblivious to my lack of excitement. "Wanna play some video games?" "Sure," I replied reluctantly, following him into the living room. As Ernie eagerly set up the game console, I glanced back over my shoulder, watching Charlie comfortably chatting with Kate on the couch, clearly enjoying himself. Meanwhile, I prepared myself for another round of childish camaraderie, once again playing the part of a 12-year-old. At least, I thought Charlie owed me this time. Chapter 7, Gambles. Evening arrived quietly, and I was relaxing in the living room, trying to recover from an exhausting day of forced socializing with Ernie. Charlie walked past me, grabbing his keys from the table near the door. "Don't wait up, guys," he announced casually, straightening his shirt's collar. Alan glanced up suspiciously from the sofa. "Back to Vegas," Charlie smiled smugly, adjusting his cuffs. "Even better. Sherman Oaks." "The gateway to Van Nuys," Alan raised an eyebrow knowingly. "Kate again?" "Charlie, you really don't know what you're getting into with single mothers," Charlie shrugged casually, clearly unconcerned. "Relax, Alan. I can handle myself just fine." Alan rolled his eyes, sighing dramatically. Famous last words. I looked over at Charlie with mock seriousness. "As long as I don't have to entertain any more 12-year-old kids, you've got my full support, Uncle Charlie." Charlie chuckled lightly, flashing me an appreciative grin. "Deal, Jake." Alan stood up, suddenly remembering something important. "Oh, by the way, I'm going out tonight too." Charlie stopped abruptly, giving Alan a curious look. "You? Out? That's unusual. What's the occasion?" Alan cleared his throat, looking slightly embarrassed but excited at the same time. "Well, I volunteered to help Gloria with the soccer league newsletter." "Oh, Gloria? The one who drives the kid van?" Charlie asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes." "Why?" Alan responded. Charlie and I exchanged knowing glances. I raised an eyebrow at Uncle Charlie, who smirked subtly, trying not to laugh. "Nothing," Charlie replied casually. "Have fun." The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. After stretching lazily, I made my way to the kitchen to get some breakfast. As I entered, I immediately noticed Alan sitting at the table, with dark eyes and a broken nose with some curative in it. I stopped, staring in disbelief. "Dad? What happened to you?" Alan groaned quietly, clearly embarrassed. "I slipped." I narrowed my eyes skeptically. "Slipped?" "Yes, Jake, slipped," he repeated, avoiding eye contact. At that moment, Charlie entered the kitchen, yawning heavily. He glanced briefly at Alan's injured face but didn't say anything about it. Instead, he walked straight to the coffee pot, pointing at it as he turned to Alan. "Regular or decaf?" Charlie asked casually. Alan sighed. "Regular." Charlie poured himself a cup of coffee, taking a slow sip. Alan waited a few moments, clearly irritated. Eventually, unable to contain himself, Alan snapped, "Aren't you even the slightest bit curious about what happened?" Charlie glanced at him calmly, sipping his coffee again. "Were you with Gloria last night?" "Yes, I was." Charlie nodded slowly, taking another thoughtful sip. "Then I think I can fill in the blanks." I poured myself some orange juice, shaking my head in amusement at the exchange between Charlie and Alan. Then I leaned forward, remembering something important. I leaned closer to Charlie and lowered my voice so Alan wouldn't overhear. "Put 200,000 on both the Rams and the Titans winning today." "Parlay style?" Charlie raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "All right, that's the biggest bet I made in my life." "That leaves 90 grand. I glanced at Alan, who was still too grumpy and sore to pay attention. Then I whispered, "Put the rest on the Rams winning the Super Bowl." Final score: 23-16. "But don't tell Dad." Charlie gave me a look, half amused and half impressed. "You're serious?" I nodded. "Dead serious." Charlie pulled out his phone and started making the bets. A few minutes later, he looked up from the screen with a satisfied grin. "Okay," he said. "The parlay bet, Titans and Rams to win today, came back at 3.5 to 1. If it hits, we're talking 700 grand, I nodded, already doing the math in my head. "And the other one," he continued, still staring at his phone, "the exact final score, Rams win 23-16, that one paid out 100 to 1. "That's insane." He shook his head in disbelief. "If that miracle happens, we're adding 9 million to the pot." I smiled faintly. "Good. Let's make history." By late afternoon, we were all gathered in the living room, snacks on the table, and all eyes glued to the TV. The Titans pulled ahead against the Jaguars and held strong, securing their spot on the final. Charlie clapped once, satisfied. One down. Next came the Rams vs. Buccaneers. It was a tense game, close all the way through. But just like I remembered, the Rams pulled ahead in the final minutes. The house exploded in cheers. "Yes," Charlie shouted, throwing his arms up. "We did it." Alan blinked in confusion. "Wait, what do you mean we?" Charlie cleared his throat, shooting me a subtle glance. "Just sports talk." Alan paused halfway to the kitchen, squinting suspiciously. "Wait a minute. You two bet again, didn't you?" Charlie and I exchanged a brief look, then Charlie gave a sheepish grin. "Maybe." Alan set the chips down on the counter. "Well? How much did we win?" Charlie leaned back with a proud grin. $700 grand, Alan blinked. $700,000, I nodded, trying to keep my cool, but I couldn't help the grin tugging at my lips. Alan raised his arms triumphantly. "We're rich." Again, Charlie laughed. "That's more like it." Alan grabbed a soda from the fridge and popped it open like it was champagne. "Jake, you're not just my son, you're our lucky charm." I smiled, then leaned back. "Now it's time for the final bet." Charlie looked at me curiously. "You want to go in again?" I nodded. "Yeah. Let's put 100,000 on the Rams winning the Super Bowl." Exact score, 23-16. Charlie whistled low. "You really believe in that score?" "I do," I said confidently. "That'll leave us with around 268,000 for me and you, and 63 for Dad." Alan looked between us, surprised. "Wait, you already did the math." "Of course," I said casually. "But don't worry, we're not putting it all in. We've got enough left over to invest, or bet smart later." Charlie grinned. "All right, kid. Let's make more money." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8, Game Over, Jackpot In. Another week passed, and Sunday morning rolled in like a quiet wave. I made my way into the kitchen, expecting the usual slow Harper routine, and was met with a familiar sight. Charlie, still wearing sunglasses indoors, slouched at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee. Alan entered next, rubbing his eyes and heading for the toaster. He looked over at Charlie with a smirk. "So, how is the game?" Charlie let out a groan. "Musician softball league is a joke. A bunch of guys trying to catch stuff that isn't there." Alan raised an eyebrow as he popped a bagel into the toaster. "Then why do you keep going?" Charlie shrugged and sipped his coffee. "There's an open bar. And they let me pitch." I walked over, sat at the table, and casually scrolled through a note left on the counter. "Oh, Uncle Charlie, Amy left you a message. She says, you're a big selfish jerk. She also wants you to call her back." Charlie didn't even flinch. "That don't happen," he muttered, sipping his coffee with the same calm as if I had told him the weather. Alan turned, eyebrows raised. "Amy? Isn't she the one with a tattoo that says freedom in Mandarin, but it actually says shrimp?" "Yup," Charlie replied. Still not calling. We all laughed lightly, but beneath the relaxed energy was something else, a quiet tension. Today was the Super Bowl. Alan and Charlie walked to the deck. There was a knock at the door. I walked over to answer it, and as soon as I opened it, I instantly regretted being the one closest. "Hi, Grandma," I said as casually as I could. Without waiting another second, I bolted for the back door. As I passed the deck, I flung it open and shouted, "Grandma's here." "Save yourselves." Alan and Charlie exchanged a brief look of panic. Moments later, Evelyn stepped into the kitchen, heels clicking sharply on the tile. "Charlie," she said, voice full of dramatic offense. Charlie stood slowly, straightening his shirt. "Mom. Wow. You surprise us. You know, people usually call first." Evelyn gave him a pointed look. "I figured you wouldn't pick up anyway." Alan stood frozen, then slowly raised his coffee in greeting. "Hi, Mom. I'm happy to see you." "Me too, Grandma," I said, knowing that there is no escape. "So, what you doing here?" asked Uncle Charlie. "I'm showing a house up the beach, and thought, while in the neighborhood, I would drop off a gift for my grandson," said Evelyn while writing a check. "You writing him a check? What kind of gift is that?" asked Alan, astonished. "I'll look the check $200. Nice gift." but I think I've become a little numb because of the money I won in the bets. Nonetheless, I said, "Thank you, Grandma," giving her a hug. Evelyn studied me for a moment, then tilted her head. "You don't seem all that surprised about the money, sweetheart," Charlie chuckled from the side. "That's because it's nothing compared to what he made on the bets." Alan made an angry face to his brother. Evelyn slowly turned her gaze to Charlie. "Excuse me? What bets? The playoffs, that sort of thing?" Charlie replied casually, leaning against a counter. "The kid's got a real gift." Her eyes narrowed. "You let my grandson gamble." "Hey, it was a group effort," Charlie said defensively. "And it worked." "How much?" she asked sharply. Charlie grinned. 700 grand, Evelyn froze. Her mouth opened and closed twice before she managed to speak. $700,000? And no one thought to include me. Alan winced. "Here we go." Evelyn crossed her arms, glaring at both of them. "I have been part of this family far longer than either of you have had working brain cells. I deserve a percentage, too." Charlie raised his coffee cup. "Welcome back, Mom. We actually bet on the Super Bowl too," I added casually. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward me. "Of course you did," Charlie chuckled. "Odds were 50-1. We put 100 grand on the Rams winning 23-16. One." Evelyn blinked, lips parting in surprise. 50-1? And you bet 100,000, "Yep," Charlie said, grinning. "A miracle, if it hits." Evelyn tapped her manicured nail against her chin, calculating. Then she gave a sharp nod. "I want in. I'm placing 100,000 too." Alan choked on his coffee. "You're betting? If this family is throwing around money and hitting jackpots, I refuse to be the only one playing it safe," she declared. Later that evening, the three of us, me, Alan, and Charlie, were gathered in the living room, snacks stacked on the table, eyes fixed on the TV. The Super Bowl was underway, and the tension was thick. By the fourth quarter, the Rams were up by a touchdown. The score, 23-16. We all sat on the edge of our seats. Alan clutched a pillow like a life raft. Charlie paced back and forth, muttering under his breath. I just stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then, footsteps approached. "What's all the fuss about?" Evelyn asked, stepping into the living room, almost making everyone having a heart attack. "The final quarter," I said. "And the score is exactly right." Evelyn sat down without another word, her eyes instantly glued to the game. The Titans had one last chance. With seconds left, they pushed forward, desperate. The final play, a pass over the middle. Caught, and tackled 1 yard short. Game over. Rams win 23-16. The room erupted. Charlie jumped and shouted, "Yes!" Alan dropped the pillow and stared at the screen in disbelief. "It actually happened." Evelyn blinked a few times. "That was precise." Charlie grabbed his phone to check the results. "That 200 grand just turned into 10 million. And Mom, you're in." Evelyn smiled smugly. "Now that's a proper family activity." Alan stood up, still dazed. "We're millionaires." One eye leaned back with a satisfied grin. "Told you guys, $10 million won, but it wasn't all." Charlie blinked at his phone, then looked back at us, stunned. "Wait, there's more." "The other bet. The one Jake made, 90 grand. Alan raised his eyebrows. "You did another bet?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, we made it together to the last one." Charlie let out a low whistle. "Odds were 100-1. That 90,000 just turned into 9 million. Evelyn stood up, gripping the back of the couch for balance. "You mean to tell me we just made $19 million in one night?" "5 technically," Charlie said, smirking. "Yes. Before taxes." Alan looked like he might faint. Evelyn, ever composed, took a deep breath and smoothed her jacket. "Well then, I suppose I should stay the night. We have a lot of planning to do." Charlie groaned, but I couldn't stop smiling. Chapter 9, Harper Management Fund. The next morning, Charlie was already at the kitchen table, a pen in one hand and a notepad in the other. He stared at the numbers, lips pressed tight in concentration. "All right," he muttered, scribbling down the first line. 5.814 million for Jake and me. He paused and wrote the next line. 2.971 million for Alan. Then, tapping the pen thoughtfully, he added, 5 million for Mom. I walked in mid-calculation, grabbing a bowl of cereal. "Working on the split," Charlie nodded. "Just trying to be fair. We rounded to 19.6 million total. Before taxes, of course." Alan entered next, still in his pajamas, hair a mess. He glanced at the notepad and nodded, with a smile in his face. "Yet, that's about right," he said calmly. "I did the same math last night. Many times. Then once again this morning. Might as well face reality now," Charlie replied. "IRS is gonna take a chunk," he scribbled again. "So if we assume about a quarter goes to taxes, that's 4.9 million off the top." One eye leaned in, watching him calculate. "Leaves us with 14.7 million, Charlie smirked. Kid still sharp, he reworked the numbers quickly. "After taxes. 4.36 for me and Jake, 2.23 for Alan, 3.75 for Mom." To Alan rubbed his temples. "I'm gonna need aspirin." Charlie stood up, stretching. "And maybe a financial planner. Or two." One eye grinned. The high from the win still hadn't worn off, but now reality was slowly settling in. Not the bad kind of reality, though, the kind where everything changes, and for once, you're actually ready for it. Charlie picked up the paper, gave it a final glance, and nodded. "Not bad for a weekend. Especially one that I did not get." Lady smirked, receiving a reproachful gaze from Alan. I set my cereal bowl down and cleared my throat. "You know, we should really think bigger." Alan and Charlie both looked at me. "What do you mean?" Alan asked, cautious. "I mean," I continued, "we should open a fund. Like, a family investment fund. Call it Harper Management Fund." Charlie raised an eyebrow. "You want us to be hedge fund guys now?" "Not a hedge fund," I said. "But close. We take most of what we have left, after everyone pulls out 1 million for personal stuff, and we invest the rest in stocks. Diversify it, be smart about it." Alan looked skeptical. "Stocks? That's still risky?" "Not as risky as betting, and let's be honest, there's a limit to how much we can keep winning at gambling without raising red flags. If we want to keep growing this, we need to make it legit." Charlie sat back, thinking. "And who's going to run this Harper fund?" I smiled. "Me. I'll manage it. I know what I'm doing." Alan glanced at Charlie. "The scary part is, I actually believe him." Charlie grinned. "All right, kid. You've earned your shot. Let's build a fortune the old-fashioned way, by letting the 12-year-old run it." I leaned forward slightly. "Look, in the worst-case scenario, everyone still keeps their 1 million. That's more money than most people see in a lifetime. But if we play it smart, we can turn this into something much bigger." Just then, Evelyn walked into the kitchen, holding her usual designer purse and wearing a perfectly coordinated outfit. "What are you all conspiring about this early in the morning?" "We're starting a family investment fund," Charlie replied casually. "Harper Management Fund?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "You mean like a proper investment operation?" "Exactly," I said. "Each of us takes 1 million for personal use, and the rest goes into the fund. I'll manage it." Evelyn narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. "And what's my role in this?" "Investor," Charlie said with a grin. "An occasional critic," she nodded slowly. "Fine. But I want monthly reports and a proper portfolio breakdown. If I'm investing, I'm expecting results." "One done," I replied with confidence. Alan looked at me again. "Seriously, who are you?" I couldn't help but think how surreal this all was. Everyone just agreed. I mean, if memory served me right, Uncle Charlie and Grandma would both fall for some investment scam from my dad in the future. The fact that they were ready to hand over millions to a 12-year-old, well, that said a lot. Then again, Alan agreeing was the most baffling of all. Maybe it was the money blinding him to logic. No sane person would leave a fund in the hands of a child, even one who made a few lucky bets. Especially when those bets had no rational correlation to each other. But then again, this was a sitcom reality. Maybe I should expect a few irrational moments along the way, more than I already have. After breakfast, I took my cereal to the patio and sat in the sun, deep in thought. The truth was, I already had 1,000 ideas racing through my mind. Now that I was officially managing the Harper Management Fund, I had to think not just like a time traveler with cheat codes, but like a real investor. The year 2000, I remembered, was rough. Really rough. The dot-com bubble was about to burst in March. It would wipe out hundreds of overvalued tech companies practically overnight. The Nasdaq would crash, and panic would ripple through Wall Street. It was terrible news for most investors. But not for me. If I played it right, I could short the market, target the overhyped tech stocks, and profit massively when the crash came. The question was, which stocks to short? Pets.com immediately came to mind. Symbolic of the bubble, High profile, no profits, huge burn rate. Webvan was another disaster waiting to happen. One I'd also need some safe havens. I remembered that BlackRock performed well despite the chaos, showing steady growth and good fundamentals. It could be a long-term anchor. One I tapped my spoon against the bowl, thinking. Short-term plays, shortpets.com, Webvan, Etoys. Maybe even a few IPOs from late '99 that were still hot. Long-term growth, buy and hold BlackRock for a year. And there are the superb, Amazon, Monster, Nvidia, Apple. And I remember the juice netties in 2002, 2 years for now 9. This was just the beginning. But if I timed it right, the Harper Management Fund wouldn't just survive the dot-com crash, it would thrive in it. And they'd all think I was some kind of financial prodigy, for which, I guess, I kind of was. Chapter 10, Style Upgrade, Dad Downgrade. I'm not going to school today, I said casually as I poured myself a glass of orange juice. Alan, still halfway through his first cup of coffee, looked up and shrugged. After winning millions? You can skip the whole week if you want. Charlie, across the table, smirked. Look at that. A supportive father for once. I'm touched. One after breakfast, we stayed at the table, the Harper Management Fund still the hot topic. Evelyn was asking for updates on the paperwork, Alan was scribbling on a yellow notepad, and Charlie was doing his best to pretend he wasn't involved. I leaned forward. Hey, Grandma. Do you know anyone in fashion? Like, real fashion? Someone with taste. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. I know several, darling. Why? I shrugged. Now that I have money, I think it's time I stop dressing like a cartoon character. I'm also planning to get my hair cut at the same place Uncle Charlie goes. Alan looked up. I can help with clothes. I've got a few ideas. I turned slowly to him, narrowing my eyes, looking the feet to the top. I think I'll pass. Dad. Charlie tried to hold back a laugh and failed. Yet, unless Jake wants to start dressing like an overworked dentist from Pasadena, maybe let him figure it out himself. Hey, Alan protested. I'm very organized with my wardrobe. Exactly, Charlie said with a smirk. A couple of hours later, Charlie took me to his barber, a sleek place in Malibu with soft jazz playing and customers who smelled like cologne ads. After the cut, we met up with one of Evelyn's old acquaintances, a fashion consultant named Clarice. She had a tape measure around her neck and an intimidating sense of style. Let's build you a wardrobe, young man, she said, already steering me toward racks of designer clothing. Trying on clothes wasn't my favorite thing, but I had to admit, it was satisfying to see the change. Slim-fit jeans, clean sneakers, layered shirts, fashionable but not like a kid trying too hard to dress like an adult. The style felt balanced, refined, something that actually fit me, not just my body, but my attitude. 6. I also liked the new haircut. Clean, modern, not overly styled. Clarice handed me a small jar of hair pomade, nothing like those cheap gels that make your hair look like it was licked by a cow. This was quality stuff. Light hold, natural finish. I could get used to this. For the first time, I looked in the mirror and didn't see the chubby, careless version of Jake Harper. I gotta work out more, I muttered, tightening the belt. Not becoming chubby Jake again. Charlie overheard and grinned. That's the spirit. Just don't turn into one of those kids who spends more time flexing in the mirror than studying. No danger there, I replied, admiring the sharper jawline starting to show too. We loaded the shopping bags into the car and headed home, feeling like royalty. But the moment we turned into the garage, we both froze. Is that a Porsche? Charlie asked, squinting. Alan stood next to a brand new, gleaming red Porsche convertible, grinning like a teenager. I stepped out slowly, staring at the car, then at my dad. You've had the money for less than a day. Alan patted the hood. It was a great deal. Low mileage. German engineering. 4. I turned to Charlie. I thought you were the most irresponsible one with money. 3. Charlie took off his sunglasses and stared at the car in disbelief. So did I, kid. So did I, too. Chapter 11, Mom finds out. 3 months passed in a flash, and suddenly, it was April. The Harper Management Fund was running, my haircut was still sharp, and my wardrobe was far from anything you'd find in a kid's department. Charlie, of course, hadn't stopped pushing the gambling angle. Come on, Jake. You nailed the Super Bowl. Let's keep the streak alive, he'd say at least once a week. I humored him. But the truth was, most games that came up in February and March? I had no memory of them. Regular season NBA games? Hockey? Golf? I had no idea who won. I wasn't about to throw thousands of dollars at random scores. Still, to keep him happy, I made a few small bets here and there, lost about $5,000 overall. You win some, you lose some, Charlie shrugged. It's part of the game, it's not a game when it's real money, I reminded him. But I've got better plays coming, because while I didn't know everything about every sport, I did remember who won the big ones. The Lakers were going to win the NBA Finals in June. Real Madrid would lift the Champions League trophy at the end of May, and those weren't risky long shots. They were just waiting to happen so I told Charlie, let's go futures. Championship bets only. Lakers for the NBA. Real Madrid for the Champions League. He raised an eyebrow. You sure about the soccer one? I grinned. Uncle Charlie, I may not love basketball, but I'm a soccer guy. Meanwhile, not all the attention stayed on betting and fashion. One morning in March, Judith found out about the gambling. You what? Her voice could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Alan tried to explain, stammering through how it all started with the playoffs and how Jake had a magic touch. Judith wasn't having it. He's a child. He shouldn't even know what odds are, let alone how to bet with real money. She stormed into the house, pointing at Charlie. This is your influence. I knew it. Charlie raised his hands. Hey, technically, he's the one who won us the millions. I was just driving, she paced, fuming, until she saw the total earnings. Then something changed. Wait, he made how much? More than 19 million, I said calmly to Judith. Blinked. She gaped, then her eyes narrowed. Then she smiled. Not a happy smile. A lawyer smile, one I want in. And you better believe I'm asking for half in the divorce. I glanced over at Charlie and muttered, just like Grandma. The days passed, and though I still rolled my eyes at how messy my family could be, I had to admit something I wouldn't have said back in January. My mom and dad, despite all their flaws, and there are a lot, were trying. Alan still hovered with his awkward affection, and Judith still nagged about things like bedtimes and screen time. But they were there. They were involved. And they loved me. I used to sigh and complain that I had a bitch mom and a simp dad. But now? After 3 chaotic, crazy months, they were both trying to be good parents too, and in their own weird ways, they were succeeding. There were other changes too. I had started working out, not like some crazy gym rat, but enough to lose the baby fat and feel stronger. A couple of morning jogs with Charlie, a miracle that only happened because, after bothering him a lot, we jogged one day, and that day he got laid with one of the hottest girls I even saw, and a few sets of push-ups each day added up. I wasn't scrawny, but I wasn't the chubby kid from January either. At school, things took an unexpected turn. I began acing every test, math, history, even science. Teachers started calling on me more, students started whispering, and my reputation shifted from lazy to genius. One teacher asked me directly, Jake, what changed? You're getting perfect scores all of a sudden. They were suspicious at first, but I demonstrate that I don't have to cheat to have a perfect score. I shrugged with a lazy smile. Guess I was just being too lazy before. Decided to put in a little more effort. Technically true. Just not the full truth. On the investment side, I decided to play it smart. I put a chunk of our fund into BlackRock. To dig deeper into the .com scene, I had Charlie reach out to a few financial analysts he knew through some of his old party circles. We posed as eager investors looking for the next big tech win. The recommendations poured in, dozens of flashy, overhyped .com startups with zero revenue and billion-dollar valuations. Pretty much exactly what I expected. Only one analyst gave an honest opinion, I wouldn't touch anything .com right now. They're all inflated beyond belief. He was right. That guy deserved a bonus. Of course, I already knew what was coming. But even with that knowledge, I stayed cautious. I knew shorting the market could have made us filthy rich, especially if I had gone in leveraged. But the risk of losing more than we invested didn't sit well with me. Instead, I went with put options. Safer. Controlled losses. And when the bubble burst in March, they printed money like a dream. We more than doubled the capital in the Harper Management Fund. I'm managing an incredible $24 million fund now. Charlie tried to act cool, but he started calling me Moneymaker Jake. Chapter 12, better than the original. Sometimes I wonder why Charlie never complains about us still living in his house. Not even a sarcastic jab, which, coming from him, says a lot. Back in the show, He never missed a chance to mock my dad. Now? Silence. The truth is, Dad could easily afford a new place now. We all could. But knowing him, he's gotten a little too used to the Malibu lifestyle, ocean view, fresh breakfast, no rent, especially the last one. That's peak Allen behavior, find comfort and cling to it like a parasite. No effort to change. No real motivation to move out. And Charlie? I think he actually likes having me around. He always had a soft spot for Jake in the show. But me? I'm not the same kid. I don't do the same dumb stuff. I'm not a walking disaster when it comes to grades or hygiene. I've made him rich, several times over. I'm smart, helpful, polite, and I can hold a conversation that doesn't involve fart jokes or video games. Honestly? I think Charlie likes me much more than the original Jake. I was stretched out on the couch, deeply absorbed in a worn hardcover copy of Margin of Safety by Seth Klarman. The book was dense, but Klarman's take on risk, discipline, and long-term investing had me hooked. I'd read it in my past life, but the reread was absolutely worth it. Charlie walked into the room, hands in his pockets, wearing that trademark half grin that always meant trouble. "Jake, buddy, I need a favor," he said. I didn't even look up. You needing a favor usually means I end up doing something weird, uncomfortable, or both. What is it this time? He hesitated for a beat. I need you to entertain someone. I finally glanced up, narrowing my eyes. How old are we talking? 12, he replied. But this time, it's a girl, I groaned, closing the book with a thud. Of course it is. There's more, isn't there? Charlie scratched the back of his neck. Well, technically, she's still married. The mom, not the kid, for my mouth dropped open. Uncle Charlie, there's a special place in hell for people like you, too. Before he could fire back some witty defense, the doorbell rang. That's them, he said quickly, straightening his shirt and heading for the door. I stayed planted on the couch, mentally preparing myself. This was going to be awkward. No question about it. Charlie opened the door with his usual charm. A tall, stylish woman walked in, heels clicking softly on the hardwood. Right behind her was a girl with long dark hair, sharp brown eyes, and an oversized hoodie. She had that look, half happy, half too smart for her age. Jake, this is, hi, the girl said before he could finish. I'm Tori. Tori Vega, 9. I blinked. Tori Vega? That name set off alarms in the back of my mind. I stared at her for a moment. Do you have a sister? I asked out nowhere. Tori tilted her head, confused. Yeah, Trina. Why, bingo. I knew exactly who she was. Charlie gave me a side glance. What's with the face? Then he leaned in and whispered with a playful smirk, don't tell me you've got a crush on your first playdate. While elbowing me, I glared at him, clearly annoyed. Nothing. Just, wasn't expecting that. Tori walked further into the room, her gaze drifting casually around until it landed on the piano. Her expression changed a lot. She was already more intriguing than most kids her age. Victoria Justice. Back in my old life, she had been one of my biggest teenage crushes. Talented. Gorgeous. Seeing her like this, so young, so completely out of context, was like a glitch in the Matrix 2. I rubbed the back of my neck, unsure how to act. A dumb part of me even wondered if I should try to be impressive. Say something clever. Be memorable. Lay the groundwork for something. But then another thought hit me, hard. Wait, what the hell am I thinking? She's 12. 12.5 and I'm, well, technically 12 too. But only technically. And I was saying that Uncle Charlie is a scumbag minutes ago? 4. Chapter 13, her name was Tori. Tori sat cross-legged on the carpet, casually toying with one of the throw pillows from the couch. I was across from her, legs stretched out, book forgotten for now. I figured the least I could do was keep her company, especially since this whole situation was my uncle's fault. So, she said, looking at me over the pillow, do you live here? Yeah. Me and my dad, I replied with a small nod. Technically, it's my uncle's house, though. She glanced around the living room. It's big. Fancy. Kind of smells like cologne and old pizza. I smirked. Welcome to Malibu. Home of mild dysfunction and oceanfront views, she chuckled, finally relaxing a bit. What about your family? I asked. You said you have a sister. Yeah, Trina, she said, letting out a sigh. She's a lot. Like, if a drama club exploded and became a person. She thinks she's destined for Broadway, Is she any good? Not really, Tori said without hesitation. But she's got confidence. I guess that counts for something, I laughed. Honestly, that might be the only thing that matters in showbiz. She tilted her head. What about your mom? She around? I hesitated a moment, then leaned back on my hands. She's traveling, no need to sugarcoat it. After the money hit, Mom had gone off to Europe, some 5-star tour of art museums and overpriced restaurants. All courtesy of her share of Dad's millions. He said it was fine. Said he was happy she was getting space. But I knew what it was. Dad got whipped. They're splitting up, I added. Divorce in slow motion, and with the way her mom had been hovering over Charlie this morning, it looked like she and her husband might not be far behind. But then again, in the series they were still together, and that's 6 years from now. Tori nodded. Yeah, that happens a lot lately. We sat in a quiet pause for a few seconds, not uncomfortable. What do you like to do? She asked after a beat. I tilted my head. Reading, mostly. Business stuff. A little finance. She raised an eyebrow. Finance? You read about money for fun, pretty much, I said. I manage a fund. Small one, 6. Tori blinked. What's a fund? It's kind of like a pool of money people put together to invest in stuff, I explained. Stocks, options, sometimes other assets. I just try not to lose everyone's money, and maybe double it when things go well. Her mouth opened slightly. So you're like 12 and running a business, technically. But not really a business in a normal way. I just need to buy stocks, a part of some enterprises, I said, shrugging with a half smile. That's insane, she muttered, shaking her head. I barely remember my email password, I chuckled. I barely remember my name is Jacob. Guess we all have our priorities, too. So what do you like to do? I asked, changing the subject. Music, she said instantly. Singing, mostly. I try to write songs sometimes. I mess around on the piano when Trina's not hogging it. I looked toward the grand piano in the corner. Wanna try it? I said, gesturing toward it. My uncle doesn't care. That was totally a lie. 3 Really? Tori said, her eyes lighting up. She hopped to her feet and walked over like she belonged there. She sat on the bench, fingers hovering over the keys for a second, then pressing down with gentle confidence. A few chords, warm and familiar, filled the room. Then, without warning, she began to sing. Her voice was soft at first, then grew stronger, richer. She didn't try too hard, didn't oversell it like some kid auditioning for a talent show. It was natural. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, genuinely impressed. It wasn't just decent, it was good. Really good for her age. She finished the short song with a gentle run of notes, then looked back at me with a small, hopeful smile. Too much? I shook my head. No way. That was amazing, she grinned. Your turn, I blinked. What? You said your uncle doesn't care. Come on, show me what you got. I rolled my eyes but got up anyway. Fine, but don't judge me too hard. I sat down beside her, cracked my knuckles like some kind of dramatic performer, and started playing a simple melody I remembered from my past life. Just a soft, flowing tune. Not flashy, but clean. Then I took a breath, let my fingers settle into the opening chords, and began to sing, Talking to the Moon, Bruno Mars. 8 I know you're somewhere out there, somewhere far away. My voice was soft at first. Tori straightened a bit, her smile fading into something more focused. She was listening. I want you back, I want you back. My neighbors think I'm crazy, but they don't understand. You're all I had, you're all I had. I kept playing, letting the melody guide me, letting the words carry more than just their meaning. There was something raw in that song, something that hit different when you felt alone in a house that never really felt like home. At night, when the stars light up my room, I sit by myself, talking to the moon. Trina, get to you. Tori stared, unmoving, completely drawn in. Her eyes were wide in hopes you're on the other side, talking to me too. Or am I a fool who sits alone, talking to the moon? I glanced at her with a small smirk. What do you think? Oh, come on, don't stop now, she whined. I chuckled, then picked up where I left off. Oh, I'm feeling like I'm famous, the talk of the town. They say I've gone mad. Yeah, I've gone mad, but they don't know what I know, 'cause when the sun goes down someone's talking back. Yeah, they're talking back. Oh, I let the final chord ring out, echoing gently into silence. Tori was still, almost breathless. Her eyes shimmered a bit in the light. Then, out of nowhere, She leaned in and kissed me softly on the cheek. What the hell, girl? I blurted, blinking in surprise. She just grinned. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Before I could say anything else, Charlie strolled into the room with a mischievous grin. Well, look who's getting along, he said playfully, raising an eyebrow too. I just fass of him. Chapter 14, From Sitcom to Something Else. Tori's mom appeared in the doorway a little later, purse in hand and car keys jingling. Tori, sweetie, it's time to go. Tori stood, brushing imaginary dust off her jeans, and glanced at me. Her expression was somewhere between reluctant and thoughtful. Well, she said, walking toward the door with me following behind, today wasn't half as weird as I thought it'd be. High praise, I said with a grin. When we reached the front steps, she turned suddenly and gave me a quick, unexpected hug. We should, talk again or something, she said. Maybe call each other. I said, blinking. Sure. I'd like that. She smiled and jogged down the steps to where her mom was waiting, leaving me standing there like a kid who wasn't quite sure what just happened. As the car pulled away, I was still on the porch when Charlie came out with a coffee mug and his usual smug expression. Well, Romeo, he said, nudging me with his elbow. Didn't take you long to find yourself a girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend, I muttered, rolling my eyes. Charlie raised an eyebrow. Not your girlfriend yet. I almost said yet, almost. But I caught myself. Just a friend, I said instead, looking out toward the street. Maybe in a few years, I thought, then quickly shook the thought away. Right on cue, Alan stepped into the scene, adjusting his shirt like he'd just walked out of a counseling session. What's going on? He asked, looking between us. Charlie grinned. Jake's got a new friend. Cute girl. Sang a duet. Hugged him. Definitely a thing, Alan squinted. Isn't she the daughter of that married woman who was here earlier? Charlie shrugged. Technicalities. Alan crossed his arms and gave him that classic disappointed dad stare. Charlie, she's married. You were flirting with a married woman in front of her daughter. Do you even hear yourself? Charlie raised his hands innocently. Hey, I was being supportive. Like a charming mentor figure, right? A charming mentor figure who kept asking if she liked Italian food and calling her gorgeous every 5 minutes, Alan said, deadpan. I snorted and headed back inside before I got dragged into their bickering. That night, lying in bed with a ceiling fan humming above me, I stared up at nothing in particular. Today reminded me of something. In my past life, I never had any talent for sports. And judging by the way I played soccer with a bunch of 12-year-olds earlier this week, nothing's changed. Sure, I can keep up, maybe even win a few playground games, but let's not kid ourselves. I'm no prodigy with a ball. What I do have is intelligence. I'm smart enough now to get into a top university again. Harvard, maybe. But that's now. After some years, I would be in the middle of the pack, of a top college. Still very impressive. But not genius level 2, and yet, I'm okay with that. I might end up becoming the greatest investor in history. Tori showing up might concern a bit, but things have still followed a general path I remember. And I'm not foolish enough to invest blindly just because I know the future. I still read the reports. I still follow the news. I analyze every company before touching a cent. I still gonna bet with some sizable money about fame? As a singer? That thought had never crossed my mind. Back in my old life, I took piano lessons as a hobby. Singing, though? I was never any good. But this voice, in this life, it's different. Maybe I have a talent for it. 3. Could I actually do something with that? 6. I turned over on my side and pulled the blanket up. Just something to think about. Tomorrow, maybe I'll test a few more songs. And that's exactly what I did. The next morning, after breakfast, I walked into the living room where Charlie was halfway through his second cup of coffee, lazily flipping through a magazine. Hey, Uncle Charlie, I said, leaning against the back of the couch. Random question, can you teach me more piano stuff? Charlie raised an eyebrow. You want me to give you piano lessons? I shrugged. You're a jingle writer, right? You must know enough to show me some stuff. Maybe some chords, songwriting tips? He narrowed his eyes suspiciously. What's this about? Did Tori say she liked musicians or something? I rolled my eyes. No, I'm just interested. Thought I'd give it a shot. Charlie smirked. You? Voluntarily learning music? Who are you and what have you done with my nephew? Come on, I said. You gonna help or not? He sighed dramatically. Fine. But if I catch you writing a song called My Heart Belongs in algebra class, I'm out, I grinned. Deal. Oh, I added, pausing. Do you know anyone who could give voice lessons? Like, actual singing training? Charlie looked at me, then blinked. Wow. You're serious? I think I might be good, I said. Like, surprisingly good. And I want to see how far I can take it. 5. He nodded slowly. Alright, I might know a guy. Used to work with some backup singers. I'll make a call, too, and just like that, I decided to give it a real shot. Singing. Performing. Maybe even writing something original. Now, not gonna happen. I totally okay with plagiarism. 9. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15, Butterflies. The day had barely started when I got the news. Josh is spending the night, Dad said casually while buttering toast, like he was announcing we were out of orange juice. Josh, I blinked. Why, he's your friend, he said. His parents asked. I said yes. Figured it'd be good for you. Hey, I'm Jake, not Drake. You don't need to pair us, I murmured, so no one listened to friend was a generous word. Josh was, okay. We'd talked a few times at school. He was one of those kids who always had cookie crumbs on his shirt and thought burping the alphabet was peak comedy. Jake needs more friends, Alan chimed in, clearly proud of his insight. Real, in person, age-appropriate friends, that part one actually agreed with. I did need more people around me, more friends. I just didn't think middle school kids were the answer. Still, I nodded. No point in arguing, it was already settled. Truth is, I'd long accepted that I didn't quite fit in. I had made a personal goal of transferring to high school by next semester. I never changed that plan because, frankly, 6th grade was comically easy. I finished assignments in minutes and spent the rest of the time reading while the teacher pretended not to notice. With all that free time, I was learning to sing and practicing piano on the side. But high school, that would require effort. I'd need to actually interact, engage, socialize. Otherwise, what's the point of skipping ahead if I'm just going to be the quiet, weird kid sitting in the back corner? 3. If I wasn't going to make real connections, I might as well stay put, where I could dominate the playground and out-react everyone in class. Still, Josh was coming over. Whether I liked it or not, the next morning, after the friends' night, we were sitting at the kitchen counter, munching on cereal and casually chatting. Josh was rambling about some game he found, something about zombie villagers that could fly. I was mostly nodding along, half listening. That's when she walked in. Cindy. Wearing an oversized tee that hung slightly off one shoulder, she breezed into the kitchen like it was a runway. Josh instantly froze, his spoon mid-air, milk dripping onto the counter. Hey, he managed to croak. Morning, boys, she said with a casual smile, heading straight for the cabinets. I kept it cool. Looking for something? Yeah, she said, crouching a bit to peer into the lower shelves. Where does Charlie keep the paper towels? Top cabinet, I replied, pointing. She reached up, and as she did, her shirt lifted just enough to reveal the lower curve of her back, and the colorful butterfly tattoo inked on her right hip. I smirked. Not bad, Josh, eyes wide and stunned, whispered, whoa, and right on cue, Alan walked into the kitchen. He stopped dead in his tracks. Whoa, Cindy turned around, paper towel roll in hand, clearly oblivious to the small chaos she'd just caused. What? She asked, confused. I just sipped my orange juice like nothing happened. Nothing, I said smoothly. Just appreciating the order of a well-timed entrance. Josh still hadn't blinked. Alan cleared his throat and put on his best parental tone. Alright, Jake and Josh, it's time to get dressed. One eye raised a finger. Wait a moment, I turned to Cindy with a perfectly innocent expression. Cindy, I think I need a few of those plastic containers from that top cabinet, I said, pointing upward. She gave me a look, half amused, half curious. Really? Absolutely. Urgent cereal storage, I said, trying to look as serious as possible. Cindy rolled her eyes with a smirk and reached up again, giving the room another display of her butterfly tattoo too. Josh nearly fell off his stool. I leaned over and whispered, totally worth it. Alan let out a long sigh. Come on, Let's go, he said, exasperated. Later that day at school, our teacher gave us a simple assignment. Draw something interesting you see around your house, she said, passing out paper and crayons. I didn't even think twice. I sketched a piano. Clean lines, a little shading, nothing fancy. Then I glanced at Josh. He was hunched over his desk like he was working on the Sistine Chapel one. I leaned slightly, curious. And there it was. He was drawing a cartoonish rear end with a butterfly tattoo on the right cheek. Not subtle. Not abstract. A full-blown, no holding back Cindy-inspired masterpiece. For I should have stopped him. Warned him. Redirected him. But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew this was going to be hilarious. And it was. By the end of the school day, the drawing had made its way to the teacher, then to the principal, and finally, to Josh's parents. That evening, they showed up at the house, stiff and awkward, holding the folded drawing like it was a biohazard. Charlie greeted them at the door, still in a robe, hair tousled like he just woke up from a very enthusiastic nap. Hey, come on in, he said. What's the? They didn't even wait. Josh's dad held up the drawing like it was evidence. Our son created this in class today. Charlie looked at the drawing. Blinked. The right cheek murmured. Then turned slowly toward me, one eyebrow raised. He crouched slightly and murmured, "Why didn't you stop him?" I shrugged with a perfectly straight face. Because that would have ruined the fun. Charlie stared at me for a second, and then covered his mouth to hide a laugh. Josh's mom did not find it funny. The conversation that followed was a blur of awkward tension, disapproving looks, and Charlie trying to sound responsible while clearly biting the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. Later that evening, after the chaos had finally settled, I returned from my vocal lesson feeling energized. My voice coach had pushed me harder than usual, and my throat was sore in a good way. Only gods know what a bad way means. Progress 10. But the second I stepped onto the front porch, I paused. There, sitting on one of the patio chairs, was Cindy. And across from her, laughing and sipping wine, was my mom. Cindy twirled her hair around her finger while leaning in close. My mom? She was blushing too. I blinked. Well, that's new. Charlie was inside on the couch, half watching TV. I walked in slowly, tossed my backpack down, and leaned against the wall. Hey, Uncle Charlie, I said casually. Isn't that the girl you're into? Right there, I nodded toward the porch. And she's with my mom. One Charlie looked up, then craned his neck toward the window. There was a long pause. Then I added with a grin, the day just keeps getting funnier and funnier. This time, Charlie didn't laugh. He just gave me a long, deadpan stare. A very unimpressed, not amused, completely defeated stare. And that, somehow, made it even better. Chapter 16, Real Madrid. May 24th, Wednesday. But not just any Wednesday, even better than the La Liga 12. Today was the final of the Champions League 2, and I was hyped. Back in my old life, I'd spent a year doing an exchange program in Madrid. I fell in love with the city, the food, the people, the energy. But more than anything, I fell in love with Real Madrid. Their stadium, the Santiago Bernabeu, felt like a monument. I'd never been the type to support underdogs just for the sake of it. That meant no Atletico nonsense. I was all in on the Kings of Europe 8 this season. Vintage Real. Casillas, Roberto Carlos, Raúl, Anelka, legends. I'd followed every step of their campaign, the hard-fought quarter-final against Manchester United, the thrilling semi-final victory over Bayern. And now, they were up against Valencia. Valencia. A team I had completely forgotten made it this far. The best part? We'd placed our bet before the quarter-finals, odds were 5-1. Charlie and I were planted on the couch. He had a beer in hand, feet up, mostly watching for one reason, the bet. Alan wandered into the living room just as the Champions League anthem echoed through the TV. So how much did you guys bet on this again? He asked, narrowing his eyes. I glanced over, smirking. 300,000, Alan froze. What, 60,000 each, I said casually. Me, Charlie, you, Mom, and Grandma, I shrugged. 300 grand on the pot for each, before taxes. Good pocket money. Alan stared at me like I'd just slapped his financial sensibilities. Jake, that's more than some people save in a lifetime. Pocket money? Seriously? Charlie burst out laughing and clinked his bottle against mine. Let the kid enjoy the richness, I just smiled. Of course, $300,000 is a lot of money. But after you make millions in just a few months, you get a little numb about money. It's strange. In my past life, it would have taken me years to save that kind of money. Carefully budgeting, cutting corners, avoiding expensive vacations. And now? A soccer night and a good bet. Kickoff. Real came out sharp. Casillas made an early save that set the tone, and soon enough, Morins rose above the defense and headed in a perfect cross 1-0. There we go, I said, pumping a fist. Kid psychic, Charlie muttered. Shortly after, McManaman had a ridiculous volley off a cleared ball. The kind of goal you dream about. Okay, that was nice, Charlie admitted 2-0. Alan was leaning in now, glued to the screen. Late in the second half, Valencia pushed up for a corner. But Real countered. A lightning clearance, a pass through the lines, and Raul was off. He rounded Santiago Canizares like he'd done it 100 times and tapped the ball into the net 3-0. Final whistle. Alan jumped up, arms raised. Yes. Yes. We won, Charlie grinned. Look at him. Didn't care an hour ago, I chuckled. Funny what 300 grand will do to someone's team spirit. For Real Madrid were champions of Europe for the 8th time, their second title in 3 years. Vicente Del Bosque got his first major trophy as manager. It was also the first final between two teams from the same country. And McManaman? First English player to win it with a non-English club. Historic. Charlie leaned in with a sly grin. You really gotta turn 18 soon, kid, I raised a brow. Why, if you were legal, he said with a wink, I'd take you out to a very fun place tonight, I laughed. Guess I'll settle for soda and pizza, cheers to that, he said, raising his beer. We clinked bottles. Later that night, we were still lounging in the living room, the TV playing highlights on loop. Alan looked at me thoughtfully. So what do you even gonna do with that kind of money, Jake? One eye leaned back, arms behind my head. Honestly? Not much. Probably put in our fund. There isn't a whole lot to spend on when you're 12, Charlie scoffed. You say that like you're 70, I've already redone my entire wardrobe. Bought every toy I ever wanted. Especially the ones I couldn't have in my last life. Giant Lego sets, remote-controlled everything. Even got a computer too. Alan blinked. You're telling me you have millions, and you've only spent it on toys and t-shirts? Well, yeah. I can't buy a car, can't own property, I have zero interest in jewelry, and Uncle Charlie covers most expenses already. 9 Charlie raised his beer again. Best roommate I ever had, I laughed. The real challenge is figuring out what's worth spending on. At this point, a great vacation during school break might actually be it. Charlie perked up. You thinking beaches, resorts, Europe, one maybe Spain? I said, glancing toward the TV where Raul was lifting the trophy. Or Italy. London, maybe. Alan crossed his arms with a half smile. You're 12. Shouldn't you be thinking Disneyland? We had been there already, I said. This time, I want tapas in Madrid, pasta in Rome, and tea in London. 4 Charlie whistled. Kids got taste. Chapter 17, Hot Crazy Chick. I was walking a little ahead of Dad and Uncle Charlie, mostly because I didn't want to be seen with a grown man mumbling about his face being numb too. I can't feel my face, Charlie, Dad said, voice slurred. You just had 2 wisdom teeth pulled, Charlie said, holding him steady. What did you expect? Champagne and karaoke. Then it happened. Crash. The sound of glass shattering. Loud and close. I turned around just in time to see a woman, wild girls, denim jacket, boots, standing on the hood of a car with a baseball bat in hand. She smashed the windshield like she was born for it. Well, that's something, I muttered. Dad pointed. Look at that, Charlie tilted his head. That is a very sexy woman, really, Dad said, blinking. That arouses you. Charlie stepped forward, grinning. How you doing? He called out when the woman looked over and smiled like she was at a garden party. Hey, she said brightly. Then she turned and shattered the passenger window. Charlie. Walk away, Dad said, dead serious. I squinted at the scene. This time, I might actually agree with Dad. Charlie waved us off. Relax. This could be interesting. I watched as she casually hopped down from the hood, strolled over, and started smashing side mirrors. Then she spun around and took out the taillights like she was in a demolition ballet. Is that your car? Charlie asked. The woman looked at him like he was the crazy one. Do I look like a crazy person to you? I crossed my arms. No, why would we ever think that? She grinned. Then shattered the rear window. So whose car is it? Charlie asked. Cheating boyfriend, no. Psychiatrist, she slammed the bat into the trunk for punctuation. Ah. Now it all checks out, I deadpanned. Then she casually handed the bat to Charlie. Hold this for a sec, will you? And like the gentleman he is, he did. She crouched, pulled a key out of her pocket, and started deflating one of the tires. Dad, still wobbly, walked over and lightly kicked the front tire. Don't these cars have alarms? The moment he said it, W-E-E-U-W-E-E-U. The car lit up like a Christmas tree. I looked at him. Congrats, Dad, his eyes widened. Okay, we need to go. Now, Charlie glanced down at the bat in his hands. Do I look like an accomplice right now, legally? Definitely, I said. We were already backing away when the woman called out, hey. You're not just going to leave me here, are you? Cut to, all four of us crammed in Charlie's car. I was rolling my eyes in the back seat, arms crossed. The woman, Frankie, she'd told us, was in the back seat with me, completely unbothered. She reached into her purse and pulled out a bottle rattling with pills. Antidepressants, tranquilizers, sleeping pills, she said casually. You want any of these? Hey, tranquilizers and sleeping pills might actually help with these too sometimes, I said, nodding toward the opposite seats. Jake, Dad hissed. Without missing a beat, Frankie rolled down the window and chucked the whole bottle out. Dad gasped. You can't just throw medication into the street, she shrugged. I gotta say, I really appreciate this, guys. Charlie, still driving like none of this was weird. No problem, Dad, grumbling. Big problem, me, not my problem. A quiet beat passed. Then Dad asked, so, where exactly should we drop you off? The woman glanced out the window, then leaned her head back. Honestly? I don't really have anywhere to stay right now. She turned to Charlie with a half smile. You don't happen to know a place, do you? 10 minutes later, we pulled into Uncle Charlie's beach house. Frankie hopped out, looked around, and said, great house. Oh wow, you're right on the beach. Then she started taking off her jacket. And her boots. Then her jeans. Dad grabbed Charlie by the sleeve. She's taking off her clothes. Charlie, smiling like a kid on Christmas, is this a great country or what? I smirked. Okay, now it was kind of worth it. Just then, Judith's car pulled up. She stepped out, sunglasses on, looking like she already regretted her decision to come. Right on time, Mom, I said. I was about to head out, but paused. I just need to grab something real quick. While I ran inside, Judith took a cautious step in, just in time to spot a woman's high heel in the hallway. She held it up like it was evidence. What is this doing here? Dad panicked. It's not what it looks like. Well, okay, yes it is, but tell Charlie he's a pig, she said flatly, and handed the shoe to Dad. I came back a few seconds later. All good? She asked as we headed to her car. Yeah, I said. Just locked the bedroom door. Judith raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. The next day, Mom was driving me back to Charlie's house. The car ride was mostly silent, one of those I'm not mad, just processing silences. We pulled into the driveway, and she came up to the door with me. I heard raised voices inside. Mostly one voice. The door flew open. Frankie stood there, phone to her ear, voice raised. You can take your damn money, and stick it up your white bread, country club. Tournament of Roses, liposuction ass. Then she saw us. She lowered the phone a little, flashed a sweet smile at my mom, and said, hi. Judith blinked, clearly caught off guard. Hi, she said, giving me a quick hug. Frankie raised a finger, hold on a second, and snapped back into the phone. Really? I'm garbage. Is Alan here? Mom asked, still unsure what universe she'd just walked into. Yeah, Frankie said, pointing toward the kitchen without missing a beat. Well, I got news for you, lady. The term is white trash. Mom turned to me, eyebrows raised. Do you know her? Nope, that's a new one. I lied smoothly. Better not to mention the whole baseball bat incident. Hi, Dad, I said as we stepped inside the kitchen. A little girl slid off the edge of one of the chairs. She had glowing eyes and a bob haircut, and before stepping forward, she did this little hair flip with her fingers. Then she walked straight toward me, stuck out her hand, and said with a big smile, hi, I'm Joni. I froze. My eye twitched. I turned slowly toward Charlie and Dad with a deadpan glare. They're getting younger. 5. Chapter 18, to London. Frankie and Joni were saying goodbye. Frankie had finally ended her whirlwind stay at the house, and I could see it in Dad's eyes. He was actually sad. I, on the other hand, was relieved. Joni had spent most of her time hovering around me like I was a celebrity, giggling at everything I said, following me around the house, and once even offering me a juice box like it was a grand romantic gesture. I mean, I get it. I'm cool. But this was a bit much when we were sitting in the kitchen after they'd gone, just me, Charlie, and Dad. I leaned back in my chair and sighed. Well, that was new. Charlie took a sip of his coffee. You mean the part where I became the third wheel in my own house? No, I said. The part where I had to deal with an 8-year-old girl having a crush on me, and Dad got all the good stuff. Dad didn't even deny it. Just gave a wistful smile. Unreal, I muttered, reaching for the last slice of toast. Welcome to Malibu. A few minutes later, Evelyn swept into the kitchen like she was making an entrance on a runway. I have exciting news, she said. I've been invited to a wedding. The daughter of an old friend of mine. Charlie glanced up. How are the bridesmaids? Evelyn turned her head slowly and gave him a death glare. He held up his hands. Just asking, I leaned forward, curious. Wait, you're inviting all of us? Isn't that kind of unusual? Weddings usually have a guest limit, and you're adding 3 people who don't even know the bride and groom. Evelyn gave a small shrug. She adores me. I'm sure they'll make room. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, it's in London. I froze. London? Suddenly, everything shifted in my head. This wasn't just a random wedding anymore. I had literally been talking about wanting to travel somewhere cold during summer vacation, and now this falls into my lap? This had to be the pilot. I leaned back in my chair, thoughtful. Huh? This just got interesting. I looked back at Evelyn. What's the name of the bride and groom? Evelyn blinked. I think the daughter's name is Amy? Or something like that. I raised an eyebrow. You don't know? She waved a hand. It's in the invitation somewhere, I'm sure. You sure you were actually invited, Grandma? I asked. Names are usually printed right on the front of the invite. Evelyn didn't even flinch. They'll be thrilled to see me. Trust me. Cut to the 4 of us boarding a first-class flight to London in that very same day. I buckled in, looking around at the plush seats, soft lighting, and the ridiculous legroom. I thought this was going to be during summer vacation. Not the next day. Alan, already fumbling with his seatbelt, added, who invites someone to a wedding one day in advance? Even if it's the mother. Charlie just grinned as he leaned back and tapped the armrest. Someone that doesn't want us to be there. I settled into my seat, feeling the comfort wrap around me like a hug. The leather, the legroom, the soft hem of quiet wealth. My first time in first class. Yet, I whispered. I was born for this. A few minutes later, the flight attendant rolled by with a tray of drinks. Alan perked up. Are those complimentary? She smiled. Yes, sir. All included. Alan nodded. Well then, I'll take 4 more of whatever that is, I groaned. Can you not embarrass us, Dad? Charlie and Evelyn, without missing a beat, replied in sync. Too late. We arrived in London, and I have to admit, the hotel was nice. Not mind-blowing, but nice. Evelyn, of course, had other thoughts. Honestly, we should have booked somewhere a little more luxurious, she said, eyeing the lobby like it personally offended her. Alan, meanwhile, was practically vibrating. This is amazing. We could see the Tower of London, Buckingham Palace, maybe do a double-decker bus tour before dinner. I raised an eyebrow. We're not in a race. Besides, what's the rush? We can stay after the wedding too. Missing a few days of school wasn't exactly a tragedy. Before the dinner, we actually did a bit of sightseeing. Tower Bridge, Big Ben, and a brief but embarrassing moment when Dad tried to speak in a British accent to a local vendor. Pardon me, good sir, might you direct me to the nearest loo? He asked in what sounded like an Irish pirate. The vendor blinked. Mate, just say bathroom. Charlie and I almost died of second-hand embarrassment. Evelyn pretended she didn't know us too. We stopped at a cafe near the Thames, where Evelyn ordered tea like she was royalty and made a show of correcting the server's pronunciation of scone. Charlie bought a street caricature of himself that somehow made him look both drunk and noble. At one point, we walked through a park near Buckingham Palace. Dad ran up to one of the Queen's guards and tried to make him smile. Hey buddy. Knock knock, nothing. Charlie pulled him back. Come on, Alan. Let the man protect the Queen in peace. By the time we were headed back to the hotel to change for dinner, We'd walked 5 miles, taken at least 100 pictures, most of them by Dad, and I had a new appreciation for just how much secondhand embarrassment one can absorb in a day. Later that evening, we got dressed up for the pre-wedding dinner. As soon as we walked in, a well-dressed woman turned and spotted Evelyn. "Evelyn," she gasped, walking over with open arms. "Thank God you came." Evelyn smiled like she expected nothing less. "Andrea, darling." Of course, Andrea Waltham too. I scanned the room and nearly choked on my own breath. Ross, Emily. My eyes widened. I knew those faces. "Wait a second," I muttered. Charlie leaned in next to me and whistled. "Now that's a good-looking one." I put my hand on his belly and pushed him back. "Yes, that's also the bride." Chapter 19, the one with Ross's wedding eye. The music in the reception area played softly, mingling with the hum of light conversation and clinking glasses. I was trying to keep a low profile when I overheard something that made me freeze. Evelyn, chatting with Andrea Waltham, leaned in and said, "Still with that husband, huh?" Andrea gave a tight smile inside. "Yes." Unfortunately, before I could process that, I heard Emily nearby say, "Oh, here comes my dad and stepmom. This is Stephen and Andrea Waltham." Steve gave a polite nod and extended a hand to the Gellers, smiling warmly. "How do you do?" "Nice to meet you." Andrea, however, didn't even notice them. She was still deep in conversation with Evelyn, completely ignoring Steve's subtle gestures. "Hey, darling, the Gellers," he prompted, tilting his head toward the couple waiting to be acknowledged. Evelyn and Andrea didn't even flinch, too engrossed in catching up over the last decade of passive-aggressive friendship. Meanwhile, I spotted Uncle Charlie just a few feet away from them, his eyes locked on someone. Between the Gellers, standing tall in a sleek red dress, was Monica. Gorgeous one. Charlie adjusted his collar, smirked, and stepped forward like a lion spotting his next meal. "Hi there," he said smoothly, voice dipped in charm. "Charlie Harper." My heart skipped. He was talking to Monica. Monica Geller too. I knew this moment. This wedding was where Monica and Chandler were supposed to get together. It was the start of one of the best couples I'd ever seen on TV. And now my uncle, my unpredictable, flirt-powered uncle, was walking right into the middle of it. I stood frozen, caught between a fanboy's loyalty to canon and the very real possibility that Charlie might derail everything. Should I stop him, too? Should I let things play out? Before I could elaborate more, I heard a voice nearby say, "She is self-involved. I should never have married her." "Sorry, what?" Andrea suddenly stopped mid-sentence with Evelyn. "It's the Gellers, darling," Stephen said, trying to guide her attention. "There's one, and there's the other." He pointed toward Jack and Judy Geller. Andrea finally snapped out of her conversation, blinking toward them. "And obviously, there my son is with one of them," Evelyn added reproachfully, narrowing her eyes at the sight of Charlie charming Monica. Andrea finally turned and offered a quick, polite smile to the group. "Lovely to meet you," she said automatically, then turned straight back to Evelyn, continuing the conversation as if the interruption hadn't happened. Stephen lingered awkwardly and muttered under his breath, "Nice of you to pay half the wedding," before trailing behind Andrea. A little later, we were seated at one of the tables. Monica was sitting next to Charlie, of course. I was across from them, next to Dad, trying not to visibly cringe. Then I saw two familiar figures approaching the table. Chandler and Joey. As soon as their eyes locked onto Charlie, the tension became visible. Joey and Charlie shared a look between them, intense and vaguely territorial. I nudged Dad and whispered, "It's like watching Animal Planet. Two lions spotting each other on the savannah." Monica glanced between Joey and Chandler, sensing the static in the air. "What's going on between you two?" Joey crossed his arms, clearly annoyed. Chandler said I embarrassed him. Charlie leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Exactly like Alan." Alan blinked. "Wait, what did I do?" Charlie patted him on the shoulder. "You exist." "It's enough." Monica raised an eyebrow, looking amused. "So, this is your family," I groaned. "Unfortunately, yes. And we brought our chaos across the ocean just for this wedding." A clinking of a fork on glass silenced the room. Chandler stood up, awkwardly holding his champagne glass. "I'd like to toast Ross and Emily," he began. "Of course, my big toast will be tomorrow at the wedding, so this is kind of my little toast, or Melba toast, if you will." No one laughed. Silence. Chandler cleared his throat, visibly flustered. "Okay. I've known Ross for a long time. In fact, I knew him when he was going out with his first girlfriend. Ross looked mortified, and I thought things were going to work out for him, until the day he overinflated her. Chandler laughed. No one else did. Jack Geller glanced awkwardly at Judy. Oh dear God, Chandler muttered. A cell phone rang in the distance. And I'm sure we're all very excited that Ross and Emily are getting married at Montgomery Hall. I mean, to think, my friend getting married in Monty Hall, still nothing. Oh come on. Monty Hall. Let's make a deal. Come on, you people. He paused, gave up. All right, forget it. Congratulations, Ross and Emily. He sat down, face redder than his wine. I glanced at Charlie, who winced and muttered, oof. Yeah, I said, that hurt to watch. Without even touching my fork to glass, I slowly stood up. Well, after that silence, I don't think I even need to clink anything. There were a few muffled laughs. I don't know Ross that well. Maybe for a little more than half an hour now, I began. But I already feel a weird connection. Like, he reminds me of my dad. That got some chuckles, so when I heard he got engaged after dating for 6 weeks, I actually said out loud, that's totally something my dad would do. Now there was real laughter. Especially from Uncle Charlie and Grandma, and tonight, I continued, I discovered another similarity between them. Both of their first marriages ended, because their wives turned out to be lesbians. How cool is that? One landed. The whole room burst into laughter. Monica nearly choked on her drink. Charlie and Evelyn were clapping the table. Dad and Ross, on the other hand, were looking daggers to me. I raised my glass. To Ross and Emily, may this one work out a little better. The room echoed with clinks of glasses and continued laughter. For once, I wasn't just part of the chaos, I was the one who tamed it. 7. Chapter 20, the one with Ross's wedding. The laughter was still dying down when Dad leaned toward me, his smile tight and whisper sharp. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I didn't skip a beat. Now you know how we felt this afternoon. Charlie snorted into his drink. He's got you there, Alan. Monica, still wiping a tear of laughter from her eye, turned to Chandler and said with a grin, maybe we should trade you for Jake. Chandler looked at her, wounded. Wow. Betrayed at my own rehearsal dinner? Joey leaned over from the other side of the table. Hey, at least he got laughs. I'm starting to like the kid. Got good timing. Charlie raised his glass toward Joey. Finally, someone who recognizes talent. Evelyn smirked. He's not wrong about you, Alan. Dad threw his hands up. What is this? Roast Alan Day. Every day is Roast Alan Day, Charlie said. Monica giggled and looked at me. Seriously, Jake, you handled that like a pro. You ever think about stand-up? I shrugged. Only if I can follow Chandler at every gig. Laughter rippled again through the table. Chandler gave a mock bow. You're all monsters. Later that night, I went to grab a soda and saw Charlie at the bar, his arm around a new woman I hadn't seen before. Blonde, short red dress, big laugh. Definitely not Monica. When she got up and walked toward the restroom, I wandered over. So, what happened to Monica? I asked. Charlie casually sipped his drink. She started talking about kids and marriage. You know, future stuff. I raised an eyebrow. And that scared you off? He nodded. Red flag, kid. Huge one. I like Monica, but once the how many kids do you want talk shows up, I'm out. Then this one shows up, too. He gestured toward the bathroom door where the new girl had disappeared. Timing is everything. I shook my head. Unbelievable. Charlie just grinned. Welcome to London. The next day, we were seated in the church for the big moment. Evelyn, Dad, and I sat together, all dressed up. Out of the three of us, Dad was easily the most excited. Oh, look at the floral arrangements. Very tasteful, he whispered one. Then a moment later, not sure about the chair bows. Bit much, don't you think? I leaned over to Grandma and whispered, and he says my mom is the gay one. She nearly choked, trying not to laugh. Dad looked around. Where's Charlie? Just then, a bridesmaid walked down the aisle, arm in arm with none other than Charlie Harper. I pointed. There he is, Dad scoffed. Of course, the music faded and the minister stepped up. Friends. Family. We are gathered here today to celebrate the joyous union of Ross and Emily. May the happiness we share with them today be with them always. The room grew still. Now Emily, repeat after me. Emily, Emily, take the, Ross, as my lawfully wedded husband, in sickness and in health, till death parts us, as my lawfully wedded husband, in sickness and in health, till death parts us. Then it was Ross's turn. Now Ross, repeat after me. I, Ross, 1 I, Ross, 1 take the, Emily, 1 take the, Rachel, 6 The room froze. Gasps echoed. Everyone's faces twisted in shock. Even Ross's eyes widened. Emily. I meant Emily, he blurted out, laughing nervously. The minister blinked, clearly unsure. Shall I go on? From behind me, I heard someone whisper. He said Rachel, right? Should I go up there? I turned and saw Rachel Green, Jennifer Aniston herself, just a few feet back. I blinked. Yes. You should. At least it'll save money on the next wedding, I muttered. Dad quickly slapped a hand over my mouth. Emily didn't even flinch. She just looked straight ahead and said, yes. Yes, go on. The minister cleared his throat. I think we'd better start again. Ross, repeat after me. I, Ross, take the, Emily. Ross shot him a look. Like there'd be anybody else. The air remained tense. As my lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health, till death parts us, Ross mumbled through it, as my lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health, until death parts us. Really, I do. Emily, he even pointed at her, as if that would fix it. May I have the rings? The rings were passed. Emily shoved his on with extra force. Emily, place this ring on Ross's finger as a symbol of your bond everlasting. Done. Ross, place this ring on Emily's hand as a symbol of the love that encircles you forever. Ross fumbled but got it on. Happy to. Ross and Emily have made their declarations, and it gives me great pleasure to declare them husband and wife. Ross beamed. Yay, you may now kiss the bride. He leaned in. Emily turned her head. He got her cheek too from in front of us. Mrs. Geller leaned toward her husband and muttered, this is worse than when he married the lesbian. 6 The band started playing. The awkward energy lingered. Ross reached for Emily's hand. She yanked it away. Just keep smiling, she hissed. Ross nodded quickly. Okay. Dad blinked at Evelyn. Why are you smiling, Mom? She tilted her head. Well, for once, someone else embarrassed themselves, and not a single Harper was involved. 2 I nodded. Grandma has a point. 1. Chapter 21, the one with Ross's wedding. The reception dinner was being held at Emily's parents' estate, a beautiful, ivy-covered mansion that looked like it belonged in a movie. The kind of place that made you instinctively check your shoes for mud before walking in. As we arrived, I spotted them, 5 of them. Ross, Monica, Chandler, Joey, and Rachel. Standing just in from the bathroom door, looking collectively awkward. I couldn't help but think, man, it's a shame Phoebe isn't here to complete the infamous 6. They looked like they'd stepped off a TV screen. It was surreal. Inside, guests milled about, wine glasses clinking and polite conversations floating through the air. Ross tried to keep smiling as people approached him with forced congratulations. Mr. Geller clapped Ross on the back as they reached the hall. Boy, bad time to say the wrong name. Oh, Ross, Ross said, incredulous. That's true. Thanks, Dad. Then, in a burst of nervous energy, he turned to the room. People should be dancing. Huh? Hey, this is a party. Come on. Joey, dance. Joey started to dance awkwardly but stopped when no one else joined him. Evelyn took a sip of her champagne and said dryly, there isn't even a proper chair to sit on, her tone disapproving. Charlie walked by, eyeing Ross's retreat. Well, at least it'll make for a memorable wedding video. Or a cautionary tale. Well, at least he already has a divorce lawyer, I added. Alan winced. Can't you all be supportive for once? I shrugged and nodded toward Grandma. She's right, though. How are we supposed to cut into steak without a table? Just then, Joey passed by gnawing on a piece of meat with his hands. Charlie raised an eyebrow and said, maybe we're supposed to eat like monkeys. That would explain the vibe. After another 30 minutes of half-standing, half-balancing awkward conversations and lukewarm food, we decided to call it a night. As we made our way toward the front entrance, just as Evelyn was complaining about the lack of valet service, I spotted movement from the side window. Emily, still in her wedding dress, was climbing out of the window. Charlie halted, raised both eyebrows, and opened his mouth to say something. Alan immediately cut in, grabbing Charlie's arm. No, Charlie turned to him. What? I wasn't going to say anything. Alan gave him a look. Charlie grinned. Okay, but I was just thinking it, Evelyn, without even looking up, muttered, "If the bride's escaping through a window, I'd say the evening has peaked." I just shook my head. Back at the hotel, Alan was still grumbling. "We didn't need to switch hotels. This one is just fine." Evelyn rolled her eyes. "If I wanted to sleep somewhere that smelled like mildew and compromise, I'd move back in with your dead father." Charlie smirked. "Can't argue with that." After settling in and organizing our luggage, I offered to go check out the reservation. As I stepped into the hallway and turned the corner, I stopped. There they were, Monica and Chandler. They quickly stepped apart when they noticed me, before realizing it was just me, a kid. Monica gave a sheepish smile and tried to recover. "Hey, nice hotel, huh?" I didn't say a word. Instead, I slowly lifted my fist and opened it, revealing a room key resting on my palm. A king-sized bed. "No interruptions," I said casually. They both blinked. Chandler asked, "How much?" I motioned for him to lean in, then handed over the key and murmured, "If you two get serious, maybe invite me to the wedding." Chandler stood there speechless as Monica turned to him. "What did he say?" she asked. Still holding the key, Chandler replied flatly, "Nothing." As I walked away down the hallway, I muttered to myself, "There. Good deed of the day done," then smirked under my breath. No blue balls tonight, well, except for Ross. 7. We reunited a few minutes later in our new suite, and yeah, it was definitely worth the upgrade. The Harper family was now lounging in soft, plush robes, scattered around a spacious, luxury hotel room that smelled faintly of lavender and new furniture. The view overlooked the Thames, the lights twinkling like some kind of postcard. Charlie had already made himself comfortable on the sofa, sipping something expensive. "Now this is more like it," he said, stretching his legs. "No brides escaping out windows here." Evelyn, sitting near the fireplace flipping through a magazine, muttered, "Finally, a room that doesn't look like it was decorated by a blind accountant." Alan came out of the bathroom, eyes wide. "The towels are heated. Why don't we always stay in places like this?" Charlie looked at him, deadpan. "Because you usually book the rooms, Alan." "I'm just trying to be financially responsible," Alan said defensively. "Then you should start paying too," Alan said. "Charlie, responsible's great," I said, settling into an armchair with a huge pillow behind my back. "But this is how you recover from a chaotic wedding," Grandma nodded. "Even a Harper deserves comfort once in a while." Charlie raised his glass toward me. "Cheers to that." Later, we ended up sprawled across the room like royalty in exile. Charlie had found a mini bar and was narrating the menu like it was poetry. Imported chocolates, champagne, macadamia nuts. "This place knows how to treat emotionally damaged guests." Alan flipped through the hotel's welcome binder like it was a novel. "They have 24-hour room service." "You know what that means?" Charlie raised an eyebrow. "That you'll order soup at 3 a.m. I was thinking tea," Alan muttered, clearly undeterred. Evelyn sighed. "Men with money don't excite me. Men who know when to shut up. Now that impresses me." We all looked at her, not buying the first phase. I chuckled and reached for the remote. Let's see if British TV is as weird as they say, too. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Notice. Hey guys, the author here. First of all, thank you for your support. I hope you are enjoying it. Some of you may have noticed that I didn't answer any questions. To be fair, I had no interaction of any kind. I have a well-paid job, but that takes up a lot of my time. Add to that, reading, hanging out with friends, and other stuff, and there's not much time left. And that time, I want to spend writing. Let's be honest, that's what most people here want. So, I'm sorry if I didn't give any attention. Some considerations: there are some characters who became really creepy, Alan and Rose, especially the latter. Charlie became excessively grumpy in the later episodes and made some questionable decisions. Judith is hard to like throughout the entire series. I will tone down some of it and change others. So, no Charlie death, unless, by some miracle, we make it to something like 2040. I don't think Jake needs this kind of development, nor do I want to write that much drama, and I don't think I'm good at it. At most, I know how to write comedy, and that's what I expect it to be, comedy. There will be drama, serious moments, and other stuff, but at the end of the day, I hope it will be comedy for spoiler. In the next chapters, Jake will go to therapy, so it will be more serious one I've already written up to, but I will only post 5 per week. That gives me a buffer, so if I get blocked, I'll have some time. I'm thinking about Patreon, but the thing is, I can't and won't promise regular chapters, nor my interaction there, nor influence on the story. Basically, you'll read the chapters sooner. It's up to you to decide if it's worth it. I'll post here anyway. Patreon.com/mhjunior. I will not stop writing because of the money. I will stop if I'm not enjoying writing anymore, or the story becomes dull about the Mick. Jake. 1. Jake will not be a master at everything. He is smart, he knows about investments, he knows how to sing, he knows how to flirt, and that's it. No master chef, no genius who will revolutionize science, no master actor, no master CEO. At most, he will delegate to someone competent, no master in sports. He will even be below average in some things too. I don't think he can be much more intelligent than I am. I've read some novels where the Mick was praised as an incredible prodigy, incredibly intelligent, and then did many dumb things. So, if Jake's concept of life, knowledge, or decision seems dumb, well, I have my own limitations too. 3. I love novels with songs. Modern Family is the top for it. But Jake became famous too soon will disrupt the story. My idea is he be like Marshmallow, and when he becomes adult, he shows himself. I'm open to suggestion about it. 19.4. I don't know about pairing. But there will be a Jake X story. I know what you want, you know what you want, we know what you want. I might write now adult Jake X adult story and save it, so if the story doesn't go that far, Jake is only 10, at least we have one of the relationships that I want. 17. Thank you, Massa HJ. Chapter 23, Therapist I. We were finally back in Malibu. As great as London had been, bridal escapes, awkward dinners, Friends episodes, and luxury hotel suites, nothing beat the comfort of being home. The ocean breeze was familiar again, and so was the sight of Charlie passed out on the patio chair with sunglasses still on. School was wrapping up for the year, and it was smooth sailing for me. Final grades were coming in, and I'd aced everything. Straight A's. Not that it was surprising, considering most of the material felt like a review from a previous life. At dinner, I brought it up casually. I was thinking, I said, between bites of grilled chicken, maybe I could skip a few grades. Alan nearly dropped his fork. What? His face froze in surprise, like he had misheard me. Charlie leaned back in his chair, amused. Well, he is smarter than you already. Might as well fast forward. Evelyn sipped her wine and nodded. It would be a waste to keep him bored with children who think long division is advanced. Alan blinked a few more times, then slowly nodded. That actually makes sense. Sometimes I forget you're still in 6th grade. You just don't talk like a kid. I've already talked with a school counselor, I said. They want me to take some tests, just to make sure. Alan rubbed his forehead, still adjusting. But, skipping grades? That's a big leap. Socially, emotionally, I'll manage, I said. Honestly, I'm wasting time where I am now. Might as well push forward. Charlie raised his glass. Here's to our little prodigy. Grandma gave me a rare approving look. At least one Harper is doing something right, I smirked. Thanks. I'll keep the family average up. The next day, the school called again. They said part of the process for skipping grades required a psychological evaluation, not just to check if I was intellectually ready, but to see if I could handle it emotionally and socially. Judith had actually wanted me to see a therapist before, back when she and Dad were separating. She was worried the whole thing might be affecting me more than I let on. Of course, Dad was against it. Therapy? For what? He's fine, typical. They never brought it up directly. I remembered seeing a therapist a few times in my past life, and it had actually been kind of nice. I'd completely forgotten how much I appreciated the calm. Actually, I said, thinking aloud to Alan, can you ask them to book the whole day for the evaluation? Alan frowned. The whole day? Yeah. I want to talk properly. No rush. The school gave a name, Dr. Linda Freeman III. According to Mom, she's pretty well regarded, I added. Alan nodded slowly. Yeah, well, she better be. She charges $175 an hour, I shrugged. I'd pay 10 times that if it's worth it. Charlie, walking by with a drink, smirked. I've paid 10 times that per hour. Then, leaning closer to Alan, he murmured, but not to a therapist. Alan didn't even blink. "You're a pig." Dr. Linda Freeman's office was tucked into a quiet building overlooking the Pacific. Her waiting room was calm and minimal, soft gray walls, sunlight filtering through large windows, the scent of eucalyptus in the air. The kind of place designed to make you breathe slower too. She opened the door herself. "Jake." I stood up and offered a polite nod. "Nice to meet you." She smiled warmly. "Come on in." Her office was cozy, not overly clinical. Bookshelves, a comfortable couch, a few abstract paintings on the wall. She gestured for me to take a seat. "I read your school file," she began as she settled into her chair. "Impressive scores. Sounds like you've had quite the year." "You have no idea," I said. "Calling it quite a year doesn't even begin to cover it." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "You booked me for the whole day. We've got until 5 p.m. 3. I glanced at the clock. Just after 9 a.m. I hadn't even had breakfast. That gave us nearly 7 hours, not counting lunch too. "And I get the feeling," she continued, "you didn't come here just to talk about skipping grades or your parents' divorce. Glad to know you're sharp." "I'm paying $3,000 for this," I said with a half smirk. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "And when I say I mean it literally came out of my pocket. I know you charge $175 an hour, which makes $1,225 for 7 hours, and I paid nearly 2.5 times that to clear your day." "Okay," she said, clearly intrigued now. "Not every day a 10-year-old talks like a lawyer." "Well then, let's start with what brought you here. We'll get into emotional readiness as we go. Let's begin with a divorce. There's not much to say. Would I prefer them together? Sure. Do I think it's realistic? Not really. They don't work as a couple, and honestly, I don't think it would be good for either of them." "Why not?" Dr. Freeman asked. "For starters, my mom might be gay. She's not completely sure yet, and considering she's nearly 40, that says something. My dad? He's difficult. Just as flawed as she is." "Do you hate them?" she asked, slightly concerned by my blunt tone. "No. I love them, in my own way. There was a time when I resented them. I still think they're deeply flawed people. Maybe even below average in a lot of ways." I paused. "My mom walks around like the world owes her something. She can act like a Karen sometimes. She's not particularly good at anything and doesn't seem interested in improving. She doesn't have many real friendships. Honestly, if she died tomorrow, I'm not sure many people would miss her." Dr. Freeman blinked but didn't speak. "My dad? He's stingy. Hypocritical, pretentious, sometimes manipulative. He sometimes avoids taking responsibility and blames someone else, but despite all that, they love me. They care deeply. And sometimes I feel ashamed or guilty because I struggle to return that love the way they deserve." "Honor your father and mother." Exodus 20:12, I added. "I wasn't a religious person in my past life. But when you get reborn, you have to rethink a few things. For sometimes, I think it's because I see myself as superior. Better than them. Vanitas vanitum, a omnia vanitas, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. In the end, I'm not so different. I just hide my flaws better." Dr. Freeman leaned forward slightly, her expression thoughtful now instead of shocked. "That's a lot of insight for someone your age. And even more honesty than most adults can manage." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "You talk about love as something that needs to be earned or deserved," she continued. "But you also recognize the gap between how much they love you and how much you feel capable of giving back. That's not cold. That's self-awareness." She paused. "You don't lack empathy, Jake. If anything, you feel too much. You just don't know where to place it yet." Support link, https://www.p@trian.com/c/mhjr. Chapter 24, Therapist II. I shifted slightly in my seat, letting her words settle in the silence. Then I said, "I'm not so sure I can agree with you. I don't think I'm an empathetic person." Dr. Freeman tilted her head, letting me continue without interruption. Most of the time, I despise weakness. I look at people struggling, people who can't seem to get it together, and I feel disgust more than sympathy. And sometimes, I know it's not even their fault, too." She leaned back slightly, hands resting gently on the arms of her chair. "Go on. I can rationalize that circumstances play a part, sure. Bad luck, bad parents, bad health. But that doesn't stop the feeling. I don't admire people for enduring, I admire people for rising. for dominating their situation. Everyone else just feels like background noise. Dr. Freeman remained quiet, studying me carefully. That sounds like contempt disguised as strength. But I don't think you truly despise weakness, Jake. I think you fear becoming it, that hide a little closer than I liked. I've spent so long analyzing people, I said, voice steady. Trying to understand them, categorize them. Weak, strong. Useful, irrelevant. It's efficient, sure. But maybe not human, to him, yet here you are, she said softly, talking to a stranger about the very things most adults never say out loud. That doesn't come from apathy. That's the voice of someone who cares so deeply, he has to protect himself behind intellect. I looked at her. Really looked. I still don't agree. I don't think I care deeply. I just know I can't say these opinions out loud. And maybe I'm here because a part of me wants someone to witness some of my demons. I paused for a moment before continuing. More than that, I believe, as Machiavelli did, that between being and appearing, it's more important to appear. Because few people can ever truly know who you are. And I still want to appear morally superior. And in professional and personal terms, appearances matter a lot. Dr. Freeman gave a slow, thoughtful nod. Yes, appearances do matter. They shape how we're perceived, how we're treated, even the opportunities we're given. But they're not the whole picture. She leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you this, Jake. If someone truly knew you, saw behind the mask, saw your demons, your calculations, your fears, and still accepted you, would that matter to you? Yes, obviously. Maybe that person would become one of my best friends. Maybe even my best friend, I said, then added in French, parce que c'était lui, parce que c'était moi, because it was he, because it was I. It's a Montaigne phrase about Etienne. For me, one of the best definitions of friendship. He isn't my friend because he agrees with me, or because we like the same things, or because we're alike. He's my friend simply because he is who he is, and I am who I am. Not a mirror. Not an echo in a bubble. And we like each other not because of, but in spite of, for Dr. Freeman smiled gently. That's beautifully put. And I think you just described the kind of connection every human being secretly longs for, whether they admit it or not. Do you have any friends like that? No, I said quietly. Not in that definition. One of the reasons I want to move ahead is the hope that maybe, just maybe, I'll meet someone who sees the world even remotely like I do. One, she nodded, her expression softening. It's not wrong to want connection, Jake. And wanting to surround yourself with people who challenge and inspire you doesn't make you cold. It means you're ready for more. I exhaled slowly, my posture relaxing just a bit. I hope so, I said. Because if not, then I'm just skipping ahead to more loneliness, only in a different classroom. Dr. Freeman was silent for a moment. Then she said, that fear, that you'll outpace others only to find yourself even more isolated, that's valid. But what you're forgetting is that growth also expands your possibilities. Not just intellectually. Emotionally, too. Yet, I think so too. She looked at me for a moment, then asked, have you ever considered going even further? I raised an eyebrow. Further how? Like college, for instance, she said. You're clearly more advanced than most high school students. Honestly, a lot of adults couldn't articulate some of the things you've expressed today. Yes, I've thought about it, I replied. But here's the thing, I'm way beyond my peers. I can solve integrals and derivatives, college-level math problems. But I will never solve the Diophantine equation, the Riemann hypothesis or Goldbach's conjecture. I'm far ahead right now, but give it a few years, and the true geniuses will come along and surpass me by miles, way beyond my capacity. 9. I paused, then added, it's like Salieri and Mozart. Salieri worked hard and was considered one of the greatest pianists of his time. But Mozart was Mozart. And it's Mozart we remember, for in the socialization would be even harder because of the age gap. If I'm not going to be Mozart, is the sacrifice really worth it? Dr. Freeman nodded thoughtfully. But that thinking assumes your value is tied only to being the very best in the room. What if it's enough to be excellent in your own right, even if someone else is a genius? I didn't respond at first. Then I said, I think I'd be okay with that, but only if I had a real passion for it. I don't have a passion for math. I don't feel refreshed after studying it. So, if I'm not going to be the next Oz, I don't think it's worth the sacrifice. And that includes most other subjects too. I leaned back slightly. What I really love is economics, especially finance and investment. Not the theoretical stuff. I love studying markets. I love investing. And, ironically, I'm already the best in the world, not because of raw talent, but because of my past life. Funny how that works. Maybe when God hates you enough, he gives you what you once prayed for. If I ever prayed to be the best investor in the world, now I'm. Dr. Freeman raised an eyebrow. Curious? Support link, https://www.p@trian.com/c/mh-jr. Chapter 25, Therapist III. I leaned back slightly. What I really love is economics, especially finance and investment. Not the theoretical stuff. I love studying markets. I love investing. And, ironically, I'm already the best in the world, too. Dr. Freeman raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. I gave a slight shrug, a smirk tugging at the corner of my mouth. I know it sounds arrogant. Maybe it is. But I understand how the system works. I see patterns. I can predict behavior, not because I'm special, but because I pay attention. Believe it or not, give me 10 years, and I'll be on the cover of Forbes. But you don't sound proud of it, she said. I've never interviewed Shaquille O'Neal, but I know what pride sounds like, I nodded. I've made peace with it. Still, it never felt like something I had truly earned. Back when I worked in finance, I had no problem accepting praise for wins that were mostly due to luck or randomness, so maybe I'm more comfortable with this than I let on. Dr. Freeman leaned forward slightly, watching me. You're not ready to talk about all of it, are you? I shook my head. This is the one thing I'll never talk about, not with her, not with anyone. My past life stays mine. Have you ever spoken to anyone about what we've discussed here? She asked. No, I said quietly. So I'm the first, she asked, a playful tone in her voice. Do you trust me that much? Yes and no, I answered. Yes, I trust that you'll keep what needs to stay private. Confidentiality is fundamental in your profession. You'd risk more than I would by breaking that trust. And from what I've seen, you genuinely care about your work. But no, I haven't told you anything that could actually compromise me. Maybe it did cause some headaches if it leaked, but nothing I couldn't redirect. I allowed a quick grin. Besides, I've still got a 10-year-old card to play. Worst case? I chalk it up to confusion. People are quick to believe a kid just misunderstood something. One. Dr. Freeman gave a short laugh, but her eyes remained focused. That's an impressive level of foresight for someone your age. It's not foresight, I replied. It's risk management, she nodded slowly. Fair enough, I have to say, she continued, her smile widening. This session went far beyond what I expected. We've clearly established that you're handling the divorce without any psychological issues beyond the typical, and that you're more than capable, emotionally and intellectually, to skip as many grades as needed. And the most interesting part? It's not even lunchtime yet. She leaned back in her chair, still smiling. I'm genuinely curious about what else we'll uncover. I let out a genuine laugh. You look like me when I find a hidden gem in the stock market. So, ladies first. Shoot, she chuckled softly. So, tell me, Jake, what do you want for your future? I raised an eyebrow. Starting with one of the toughest ones, huh? I held up my hand and counted with my fingers. I could sum it up in 5 words, to have a successful life. That's it, then I added, and for me, that's synonymous with a happy life. Linda nodded. Elaborate more. I could go through the concept of a successful life from the lens of ancient Greek philosophy, trace it through medieval thought, and bring it into the modern philosophical landscape. But in the end, for me, only the individual can say whether their life was successful or not. It's not about money, fame, or power. Someone might feel incredibly fulfilled being a janitor, while another person could feel like a complete failure as the CEO of a major corporation. It's like in Tolstoy's book, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. A man who had everything society defines as a successful life, status, wealth, reputation, lies on his deathbed and wonders, was that all there is? That's not success. That's regret. And for me, that's the definition of a wasted life. So to answer your question, I continued, I want to read as many great books as possible. I want to taste the finest things money can buy. I want to have incredible relationships. And most importantly, I want to look back one day and say it was all worth it. Dr. Freeman smiled gently. That's beautifully said. And very self-aware. You're not just chasing success, you're defining it on your terms. That's rare, Jake. Thanks, I replied, my voice softer. We talked until late afternoon. When we finally wrapped up, the clock showed nearly 5 p.m. too. This has been productive, Dr. Freeman said as she closed her notebook. Jake, I think it would be valuable for you to continue these sessions. I agree, I said immediately. But I'd like 2 hours per week. One feels too short, she gave a short laugh. Most kids can barely sit still for 30 minutes. But I think that suits you. I left her office feeling clear-headed, almost energized. When I got back to Charlie's house, both he and Dad were in the kitchen. Charlie looked up. So? How was therapy? Did she fix your twisted little brain? Alan glared at him. Charlie, I dropped my backpack on the floor. It went well. We'll keep meeting. I asked for 2 hours a week. 3. Alan blinked. 2 hours. Charlie poured himself a drink. Kids aiming for a PhD in psychology now, I smirked. No, I just like good conversation. And she's one of the few people who actually knows how to listen. 6. Charlie raised his glass. Here's to finding the one person in Malibu who listens. 1. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.